If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. When you do, make sure you hit the notification bell. That means that you will be informed of when a new video has been released. If you would like to take that support one step further, you can do that via Patreon, which is an optional monthly service. You can donate money towards the channel, or you can go over to Ko-fi.com, and for the price of a coffee you can help donate towards the channel as well. Links for all of those will be in the description of the video, and without further ado, enjoy the video.
Okay, record start. I'm good to go.
Right, let's get going.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be listening to another episode of the Non League Nosh. I am James, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague and good friend Adam. How are you doing this evening, sir? You well?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good indeed. Looking forward to another podcast. It seems like ages since the last one, even though it was only a couple of days.
I know. We've both kind of had a bit of a break, really, haven't we? We kind of powered through like a week's worth, and then last couple of days we've both just said, "No, we need some time just to."
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I've wanted to switch off a bit after that one, but like, we did have a bit of an intense week. I feel like that one sucked it out of me a bit, like depth of conversation and everything that we went into. I feel like afterwards I was really tired from that one. There's like jobs that I've
talked, didn't he?
Oh, he did, but there's like jobs that we've got to get done for the podcast, and I've kind of left them sitting, which I'm very conscious of. So we should have a little sponsor coming up soon, which we'll be able to announce.
Yes, that's very exciting. Very exciting.
What would help though is if I sort of sorted the paperwork out for them, which is kind of the important bit.
Dear me, gotta pull your finger out, mate. Gotta pull your finger out. But
sorry, I might have to delegate these duties.
Obviously, I joke. But yes, Adam, before we announce tonight's guest and before we get into it, I do just want to say a absolutely massive thank you to everyone who's been viewing and listening to the podcast, not only from a YouTube perspective, but also from all of the other podcasting methods that you can download these on. The turnaround has been absolutely incredible, hasn't it, over the last couple of days? What?
In the last
300%, something like that?
In the last 7 days, our increase in volume is so much so that the last 7 days accounts for 50% of the last 30 days listens.
I mean, that's just incredible. So really cannot thank you guys enough. You've obviously been really happy with the people that we've been getting on recently. So we appreciate what you're continuing to do. And today's guest is going to continue in that vein. We have got none other than ex-Brighton, Colchester, Southampton, Leicester, and loans in between as well, midfielder Dean Hammond on the show. Dean, how you doing, mate? You well?
I'm very well, gentlemen. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Actually, I say that up until about 5 o'clock today after that announcement, but we won't dwell too much on that. That really set me off in a bit of a bad mood. But
sorry, mate. Next week we'll go out holding hands together, since it seems that's okay now.
Yeah, well, this is it. But yeah, politics aside, absolutely superb, mate. Absolutely superb. How are you finding life in lockdown? It's always a question that we start these podcasts off with. What has life been like for you?
Interesting. Yeah, it's been challenging, I must admit. But grateful that all my family and friends have got their health, so that's the main thing. The kids have been homeschooled, and their school have been particularly good, so that's helped. I've got 3 children, so, and the youngest one is, just trying to keep him entertained, and then myself trying to do bits and bobs in between with my business and media stuff, and trying to keep myself sane. So it's
like most people, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a challenge, but my family's got their health, so I'm very grateful.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. So with the businesses that you are involved in, have you been able to do much from home, or has that kind of been put on hold as well? Because I know from myself and Adam, our jobs have basically just come to a bit of a grinding halt, haven't they? So,
what you say that, James? I don't know if I've told you. I'm back to work next Monday.
Oh, are you really?
I am.
No way.
Yeah.
Mental. Well, there you go. No, you hadn't told me that.
Podcast balancing act. But yeah.
Crazy. There you go. So, sorry, go on, Dean. Your side of it. Have you been able to do much from home then, or is it not? Is it just very limited as to what you're capable of doing?
Yeah, it is very limited. I've been doing bits and bobs and ticking over. So in terms of, I do a bit of property investment. So that's just monitoring things really. And then I've started my fitness business, which is just I'm doing a personal training course at the moment. So I'm going through that, which is all webinars, which is a little bit different and a little bit intense. But in terms of businesses, no, just ticking over really, nothing major. So I've been quite fortunate. I've been able to spend a lot of time with the family, which is nice.
Yeah, I have to admit that is one of the positives in amongst all of this. I've got to spend so much time with my boy, and I've got to experience those moments that if you were at work you would have missed. So yeah, it's been incredible from that part. And Adam, can you believe it? He's 6 months old today.
Well, that's flown. The annoying thing is, James, that because of everything that's going on, it's in them 6 months. I've only been able to see him about 5 times.
Yeah, I know. Dean, I popped round Adam's the other day, and I was stood at the bottom of his driveway with my child. Adam stood there with his child. We're trying to have a conversation, and like mine just burst into tears and just not having any of it. He wants to be on the move.
I had to sit my child on the roof of our car. We've got like a 4x4. I had to sit him on the roof of our car so he could see into the pram because he wanted to see the baby. Like the lengths you have to go to.
It's mental, absolutely mental. But yeah, so before we get into these podcasts, Dean, what we always do is we do quick-fire questions just to kind of to get you in the mood into the podcast, and just for our audience to find out a little bit more about you. All right, yeah. So I'm going to give you some choices, and you just have to pick whichever one's your favourite. All right, so we'll start off with Chinese or Indian.
Indian.
Didn't even think. That was incredible.
I had a curry for lunch. Went down a treat.
Nicely done. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Good man. James is getting upset here.
I'm not feeling these. Not gonna lie.
Well, I used to drink a lot of coffee, and I've given up over the last 3 to 4 months. So that's why I said tea. I used to be, I wouldn't say addicted to it, but I was drinking way too much coffee. So it's definitely tea now.
I was going to say, was the reason why because you were drinking so much, or has there been another reason why you've just decided to stop? Because I can't stop.
Well, I got into it just through when I was doing a loan manager's role at Leicester. I lived down south, so I was obviously working at Leicester, so I was leaving at like 4:30 in the morning. So, before 9 o'clock, I probably had 3 cups of coffee, and then it just went through the day and things like that. So I got into the routine of drinking a lot, and it started to have less and less effect on me. So I was drinking more and more coffee, and then it just affected my sleeping pattern. So I had to stop drinking it.
I say that I'm drinking one right now because I know that we're going to be up for ages, Adam, after this.
Always are. It's just a standard for you. I haven't even got water with me today.
100%. At 10 to 8, I'll tell you my routine, Adam. 10 to 8, the laptop's set up. I've got all my research page open. The mic's set up. I go into the kitchen and I flick the kettle on. It's exactly the same for every single podcast that we do. It's a bit of a routine now.
I tend to scream go to sleep for the last time at 10 to 8. Perch on my bed agonisingly, waiting for him just to wake up one more time, then sprint down the stairs to arrive in my room normally at 1 minute past 8.
Brilliant. So, to go along with your tea answer, what is your favourite biscuit to dunk?
Oh, good question. Maryland cookies.
Oh,
very specific.
You get a lot of them for £1, though, don't you?
Yeah, you're not wrong. So I wouldn't say it'd be one biscuit, because I'd probably say the whole pack.
Bulk buy, that's the answer. Your favourite alcoholic drink, if you do?
Oh, used to be. Just a Peroni, I would say. I don't drink anymore, but used to be a Peroni.
Absolute rocket fuel, that stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right.
I can't be dealing with that.
Nice answer. Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
What's your main thinking behind that, as opposed to Twitter?
Probably a simple reason. Basically, I enjoy looking at photos more than probably reading. So
fair enough.
Yeah, that.
I have to admit, I contributed to it tonight, but tonight's Twitter timeline was just non-stop politics, and I said I was guilty of it myself. So I do get it. Like when there is a interesting topic, Twitter, you can't dissect away from whatever it is that's going on in the world. Everyone's talking about it. Your favourite type of music? What are you into?
Oh, good question. Do you know what? Probably haven't got a favourite type of music. I like a bit of everything. Probably the more older stuff as well. Like my dad used to play. So probably 70s and 80s music. Really, I wouldn't be able to give you a particular song, but just that sort of generation.
80s is the best music anyway, and I'm saying that as a 90s boy. There's not even a debate.
Many people would argue with that, James.
No, it's not a debate. It's not. And I'm sorry, but like our music was all right. Like today's is terrible. Ours was all right, but the 80s were the proper days of music. Although if anybody wants to come on and challenge that let us know. Argue with me on Twitter. I'm always up for that. I say favourite box set, and by box set I mean TV programme, because a lot of people have been getting confused with the way I say box set and thinking I mean boxer. But your favourite TV programme?
Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Oh, you two are going to go on for ages here.
Oh, yes. Amazing programme. I was devastated when it finished, but no, amazing programme.
Were you devastated because it finished, or were you devastated with the way it finished? Because I was definitely the latter.
A bit of both, to be honest. I was devastated because it was something that I really enjoyed watching. But I enjoyed the build-up to it, trying to guess how it was going to finish. Kind of had a clue how it might finish, but yeah, it wasn't the best ending. It didn't leave me on the edge of my seat, or potentially. Well, I wanted more because I love the programme, but yeah, it wasn't the best ending.
No, it's still a sore subject, isn't it, Adam, for me? Personally.
Yeah, the thing is, I got really into it. I watched 4 seasons and bought the 5th season on DVD.
Right.
Off eBay. When it turned out it was a pirated one. And I turned it on, turned it off very rapidly, got my money back, and never found another way of watching the 5th season. That's where I've left it.
Well, you got to watch it. You got to finish it.
Well, the thing is, it took me so long to get into it because I wrote it off as just dragons, boobs, and general ancient nonsense for a long while. And then when I got into it, I was absolutely hooked. But floated away.
I was exactly the same. I think every one of my family members was on season 6 by the time I finally started getting into it. So I had like this mass watching it like one after the other, whereas all of them were waiting weeks on end for their episodes. So no, it's good to find somebody who likes a Game of Thrones.
To abuse from your brothers, to be honest.
Yeah, they did. Your favourite film?
Oh, Shawshank Redemption.
It's a favourite of the channel, I think, by now.
Very popular. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Good.
Yeah. Other than football, what's your favourite sport?
Boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can actually ask who's your favourite boxer now.
Yeah, go on then. Why not? Let's add that to the mix.
Favourite boxer? Well, he doesn't box anymore. I used to like Carl Froch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not necessarily because of his technique or his ability, but just because it was just every fight was entertaining. And he'd have a tear up, and it was a proper fight, and it was exciting to watch. So probably him.
It's a real accelerating industry, boxing, isn't it, at the moment? I think.
Huge industry now.
It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can be a casual boxing fan quite easily. And it seems like everyone's into it. Doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, gender, anything. Boxing's getting massive.
Great sport. Really good.
There you go. I would ask this question. I'm going to ask this question. I don't know whether or not you might give me an answer. Do you prefer FIFA or Football Manager?
I'm not really a gamer, to be honest, but I'd have to say I used to play. My boy plays FIFA, so I'd have to say FIFA.
Right.
Join in with him.
Yeah.
Well, I tried that once. I think you beat me about 8-0. So I think I threw the controller there and walked out and went, "Never again."
So let's ask you a couple of football questions, and then we'll get on to the main topic. So, who did you support growing up?
Well, I'm a Sussex boy, so I always followed Brighton. Not that they were doing particularly well at the time when I was growing up, but my dad was a Nottingham Forest supporter, so it was a bit of Brighton and a bit of Nottingham Forest. Nice,
good answers. Your favourite player growing up?
I used to just follow Paul Gascoigne around. Whoever Paul Gascoigne played for, really, he was the player that I looked at, sort of idolised, and then later on, Roy Keane. I used to love watching Roy Keane play.
It's amazing, like how many ex-pros that we speak to say Paul Gascoigne was like the player they wanted to emulate.
Yeah, just amazing player. I mean, if you watch clips of him, and you good gents must have seen him play, just the way he dictated games and what he could do with football, and just brilliant. And he was just a personality as well. He just looked like someone when you were a kid watching him play, and he loved playing football, and you thought that would be nice to have that feeling and play football in the way he does. He was just brilliant to watch.
Yeah. I have to admit, I've only ever seen kind of highlight reels of him. I've never actually like watched a full 90 of any of the sort of stuff that he did, but it would have been great to watch him play. Best player you've seen live?
When I was younger, I watched England v Italy, and I watched Zola play live. He was, some player at Wembley. That was. He was,
Wow, there's another one that's a proper defining player of a generation, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah, amazing player.
He was one of the first that kind of, from what I remember, he was one of the first to kind of come into the Premier League, wasn't he? Like, as in what was the foreigner back then, to come in and really change the game in England. He was one of those first, like him and like the Henrys. Do you know what I mean? That was that kind of ilk.
He was technically brilliant. And players that I've played with that have played with him or managed when he was manager at West Ham, used to say he used to join in still, and he could have still played. He was the best player in training, the best player out of the group, and he was manager at the time. So, he was probably, I don't know what he would have been then, mid-40s, late 40s. Brilliant.
I tell you what, that is a hell of an answer to finish that segment of the show. Brilliant answers. Let's get into the nitty-gritty then. We always start these podcasts off with talking about the latest news from around the world of football. Obviously, we have seen in last couple of weekends that Germany has really started up their season, which is great. Sorry?
I'll tell you what, James, Germany. You asked me earlier, have I got anything to talk about today about that? Germany restarting their season. What is it with them putting cardboard cutouts in the crowd?
Yes, that's brilliant. Do you know,
good grief.
It's cardboard cutouts of their fans.
Yeah, but did you see that one where the bloke didn't take the full body shot as requested? So it's just a square picture of his head on a white cardboard cutout.
Really?
Yeah, and it was clearly on shot in camera.
No, I haven't seen that one. I have seen someone do a stormtrooper one. I have seen that on one of the images going around tonight.
There's another club are going to do a Zoom wall, aren't they?
Really?
So fans can dial in via Zoom. I think 15,000 people are going to be able to zoom into the ground.
Really?
Yeah. They're paying for video walls to go around the pitch. So I don't know if like everyone's microphone will be on, because that would be hilarious in one way. But like,
I'm sure they'll be muting all on Zoom then when they do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine the things that get shouted out, can't you? Especially from within the confines of your own home.
Yeah. So the latest from the English game is that we continue to see the Premier League and the Championship try to get their season kick-started, although in the last 8 hours or so, we have seen that Bournemouth, a couple of their players have tested positive for COVID-19, as have 2 Hull players. Now, it's an interesting topic to still be talking about at this point, considering there's been so many. All the different leagues have got their own way of being able to try and settle the season. But I'd love to get your thoughts, Dean. What have you made of the whole situation where some leagues have decided and some leagues haven't? What's your kind of thoughts on it as an overall picture?
It's a difficult one because I can see obviously from a health perspective and everyone's lifestyle, and it's, you know, football plays second to that, obviously, and people's health have to come first. But if we're talking about football, I believe the best thing would be to finish the seasons. Now, how you do that, I don't know. The way Germany are doing it shows it is possible. And I think it went out today that the Liga is maybe starting on the 6th of June, if I'm right in saying that. So it comes down to, like anything, because like you say, the Premier League and the Championship are trying to restart the season. It is to do with finances, obviously. The game is a business now. It's a sport and it's an entertainment, but it is a business. There's so much money in the game now, especially at that in the Premier League and the higher end of the Championship, that, in my opinion, there's no way that it won't finish. Now, when that will happen and how they would do it, I don't know. The safest way is the best way, obviously, and playing behind closed doors limits the amount of people that can potentially get infected or pick up the illness. And they're testing the players every day, I believe, or weekly at the training ground, and they're getting results back from that. So it can be done, but it just takes so much time. And the issue you'll then get is, how will that affect the transfer market in the summer? How will that affect players out of contract or in contract? How will that have a knock-on effect for next season within this country and then into Europe? How do you balance everything? If whatever decision you take, there's going to be legal cases and clubs wanting to sue the federations because maybe they've been relegated or not got into Europe. So it's very difficult and it's a bit of a mess. But I think the best thing would be to try and finish the season. And if you couldn't do that, it would probably leave the Premier League as it was. No relegations. Give Liverpool the Premier League. Whoever's in the Champions Leagues and the European positions, give them positions, and then bring 2 up from the Championship, and have a bigger Premier League next season, and then maybe have 4 relegations next year, which would make it more exciting next year. Not that it needs more excitement, but it would make it even more exciting. But then what do you do with the teams in the playoffs in the Championship for the next two seasons? There's always going to be an issue, whatever you do. Yeah. But I think if you can do it, I would finish the season somehow.
The kind of issues you've got going through the leagues. League 2 have already decided that they are going to settle their season. The top 3 have been declared that they are going to be going up. There's still the issue of Stevenage's relegation to be fixed and sorted out. National leagues are now looking at that and wondering how many of their clubs are going to be allowed to go up. It looks very likely that League 1 is going to be cancelled, but no decision has been made on that.
I hope League 1 is cancelled, not just because I'm an Ipswich fan.
I was going to say you said that.
No, I genuinely, I don't think there's direct impact on. There's a very, very large impact on Championship clubs being promoted because of the money.
Yeah,
I know there is a difference between like Division 1 and the Championship, and obviously they might say, "Oh, but what if we got back-to-back promotions?" I mean, I haven't seen that happen for a long time. I think Norwich was possibly the last club that did it. Like, I just don't think it's relevant to risk that amount more people for something that will have no real benefit. Whereas I think you probably need to look a little bit more broadly at the Championship spectrum, and because it's not just about going up. If they come down, you've then got the parachute payments and stuff, and those can change a club for a long time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think one thing that I did raise, because when I spoke to Ellis the other day, Adam, unfortunately you weren't able to come onto that podcast, but when I spoke to him, I mentioned to him that if you look at the table after 36 games last season, the top 2 didn't go up. Mm-hmm. They finished in the playoffs. So for me, I get the point of it. You know, I don't see why we should be cancelling the season. This, from where I'm kind of looking at things, I think the seasons should be played out. I don't understand. I've said it, and I'll reiterate my points from the early podcast that we don't. I don't understand why we're so concentrated on trying to start next season, as opposed to why can't we wait to try and finish this year? Now, I know there's contractual stuff that needs to be sorted out, and if other leagues around the world are going to be trying to finish theirs at certain points, there's that whole kind of debate to get into. But it's not points per game works to a certain extent, but it's still football is not played on paper. Wacky results come from all over the place. Leicester's great escape, which we'll get into later on, under Nigel Pearson, wouldn't have happened if the same thing happened back then, and the points per game was decided. So it's very, like I said, Dean is 100% right. It doesn't matter what answer is provided. No one is going to. You can't make every single person happy because everyone's got their own agenda.
It's interesting though, because the landscape of things has changed again. We say that, although the topic is similar across the podcast, the actual landscape changes every time we talk. And the fact that now clubs are getting back to training, but now are starting to test positive, that worries me. I know it's not great numbers of people, but one is more than the fact that somebody is positive means that it could spread, which is the issue. And then you're back to square one, really.
And I think it's evident by the fact that some players, Troy Deeney is the poster for it at the moment, are refusing to go into training because he doesn't want to risk the health of his family. I mean, you can completely understand where he's coming from, can't you?
Yeah, he should be supported for that.
But he's not. This is the thing. He's been given dog's abuse online in particular.
But I don't get it. Like, the people that are going to give him the abuse, why can't they turn around and think if it was their family, would they rather go and play football or protect their family from getting poorly?
But they don't.
It's the entertainment industry. Do you know what I mean? He's not a doctor. He's not a firefighter. He's not a policeman. He's a footballer. That's not degrading to the industry at all, but entertainment has to come second to these very, we're talking about entertainment. I mean, what's the last entertaining thing that was able to be done in this country? Probably Cheltenham.
Yeah, look what happened there.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? There's a huge fuss being created about something that we're missing, but now it's gone. Like, when it comes back is just when it comes back. There shouldn't be any real rush or pressure on people to get back in a situation that is as is.
Yeah, I mean, from your kind of perspective, Dean, obviously you like all of us, you've had a couple of weeks to kind of listen to people's opinions on how things should be settled. Where do you kind of sit in terms of like the points per game, that kind of stuff? Do you think it should just be done on the placements of where teams are now? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, if the conclusion was that this season is going to be finished and there's going to be no more games, I will personally finish it as it is. So wherever you are in the table, that's how good you've been this season. I know your point earlier is very valid. Yes, if that had been the season when we stayed up with Leicester, obviously we would have been relegated. And things can change. There's mad results as you get towards the end of the season. You can pick up form, confident changes. You may get some injured players that miss most of the season come back and hit form. But I think the only way it's going to be settled is by finishing the season. But if it wasn't, you need to go probably the simplest route possible. And the simplest route is just wherever you are in the league, you're champions, you're fifth, you're fourth, you're in the relegation zone. That's how good you've been this season. That's how well you've performed. Unfortunately, this has happened. This is the situation, and this is what's going to happen. And then the knock-on effect on that, that's the problem, because you could finish the season by doing them, but then there could be huge delays starting the next season because of lawsuits and court cases. And then what do you do then? Do you delay the following season because of that issue? Teams saying, well, we're not going to play because we refuse to be relegated. We're going on strike. Who knows? It's really, really difficult. Really difficult. The only way I can see is to finish the season. If that means we keep monitoring the situation. Players keep getting tested. We gradually increase the training from small groups to larger groups, to contacting training to see how that goes, to see how the league goes, to see how the season goes in Germany. And then next season, I don't know, you make it a shorter season. I don't know, you maybe play one team each. I don't know. The issue is because of the European Championships next summer.
Yeah.
That's why. So you're there. People are always looking ahead and trying to plan ahead. They're thinking, well, this is huge for us. You've got the European Championships, and I think you've got the Olympics that need to be done next summer as well.
The Olympics are already talking about cancelling or stripping right back.
Yeah, but then you'll get players from teams and around the country, around the world that want to play in that. It's just really, really difficult. There's so much pressure from so many people. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be the one making the decision. Put it that way.
There's some other big things as well, like very unsuspecting. People have seen the last game out of several players for their club. David Silva's the big one that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's from a local level all the way up to the very top of the pro game.
Of course, yeah.
And those are quite big moments. And I think that's quite sad in a way that that's going to be stripped and removed.
You think of that as well. I mean, Brentford, they're leaving Griffin Park, aren't they? I mean, they potentially played their last game there, whether it's their last game or it's their last game. The fans might not be able to go there to see the ground off, the history of the ground.
The new one definitely doesn't get
a lovely new stadium, but
yeah, I mean, it doesn't look full of history though. I've seen inside. They've gone for the old multicoloured seats to make it look more full when people don't turn up, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a very, very valid point. I mean, obviously, from a non-league perspective, the decision was made very early to not only cancel the season in terms of games to be played, but then also to completely null and void it. I'd love to get your kind of thoughts on that, because although you only just recently signed for the club, in terms of Worthing in the Isthmian Premier, they're top. They're 7 points clear. They're well on their way to winning the division. So where do you kind of sit on the null and void side of things that has been already decided?
Yeah, I didn't really understand that, if I'm honest. Why null and void it? Why not just like we've just discussed? Where you are in the division, that's what happens. You get promoted, you get relegated. We're not talking that the season was 10 games in. It's the majority of the season's finished. I think there was 8 games left. So not a huge amount. The decision was, I think, was a good decision in the fact that, not the decision, but it was based on health reasons, because it was based on, right, we need to just stop this now. We need to minimise the spread of the illness. And that's, I understand that. But to null and void it, I don't get. And, Worthing is a team that's full of younger players that play in the right manner. Not a huge budget at the football club. Usually each season the squad gets torn apart because players have done well and they get bought, or they move on, they move up levels, and then you have to develop it and bring a new squad together. So it's very difficult, and they've had a really good season. They've got a young manager there, Adam Hinchelwood, that I played with at Brighton. He's got a really good future in the game, and it'd have been brilliant for him from a personal point of view to get his first promotion as manager under his belt. Especially with, the average age of the squad. I mean, when I went to trainer and I signed, I brought the average age up by a massive amount, put it that way. So we were playing young v old games in training, and I was probably playing on my own because I was the only old one. So it was, they had a fantastic season, and it's very disappointing for them. I didn't quite get that decision, why they null and void it, why they just didn't go with, right, wherever you are in the season, you'll get promoted, you'll get relegated. But I don't quite know the politics of their reasoning behind that, but I didn't quite understand it.
I mean, we're involved in non-league level quite obviously a lot, given the name of the title, the show, etc. Adam, people who listen to the show regularly will know that you're involved with Stowmarket, who are miles clear of the furlough non-Premier. A very similar situation to Worthing. I think we're all in the same boat, that for teams who are at the top, and again, it's an agenda base, but the decision makes no sense.
I genuinely.
So null and void. It makes no sense at all, does
I
it?
don't think football matters at that level to the FA like it matters at a higher level. Look what happened when Bury went out of business. The PA around it was horrific. Like the FA got really slaughtered on that. Like, you know, if a top end club would go out of business or whatever because they couldn't play their games, or whatever, it would be absolute carnage.
Yeah.
If Dog and Duck FC down the road, to use the very, you know,
generic non-league term, yeah.
Exactly. No one misses them in their eyes after a week, but that's not how it is. And those, like, I saw a comment yesterday which I couldn't help but reply to, where someone said, "Oh, having it all null and void shouldn't be a problem, like with them having no income or anything, because they shouldn't have overspent in the first place." These people don't realise that clubs spend based on their projection of what comes through the door, of primary and secondary income, not just tickets, like on what gets spent on average behind the bar, what they can improve in that season, what the food sales are, what the programme sales are. That's how they work their budget out. These clubs have none of that income, and that's why they're in trouble. Not because they've overspent.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you turn that tap off on people coming through the gate, for a lot of clubs, and we've already seen it where people have, you know, clubs have dropped out of leagues, have gone bust already. It's only going to get worse if we can't, if we can't move this on. But
so I think I've seen people say, "Oh, you know, like sponsors will surely like have, you know, clubs will have had their sponsor money in non-league, like so that would have helped in the first place." Well, why not expect some sponsors would be asking for some of it back, because that's the world of business, and you haven't been able to fulfil your contract. And secondary, if anyone in business had any common sense, they would try and advertise in as much non-league stuff as possible, because you can have a whole season of full program for about 30 quid most places. Like for sponsorship, it's an absolute steal. Like, considering how much it costs to put your name in a newspaper or something like that, and the exposure in the different markets. So the level of income off these clubs is so minimal, like from sponsors and stuff. It's the other income that actually, you know, turns doors round. And that's where you'll notice that if you go to a club and they have about 30 people standing around the pitch, I can tell you now their budget will be next to nothing. Because they won't have that income, primary, secondary. They will know that on the forecast. If you've got a team that you go to and they have 200 people that go around the pitch every week, it'll be a whole different story.
Yeah, definitely. For anybody who is new to the podcast, is listening to this for the first time, would love to hear your thoughts. Let us know on what you would do with the season. What is the right decision up and down the football leagues? How would you settle things? We would love to hear your thoughts. Either get involved on Twitter or let us know by the comment section of the YouTube video. That'd be very much appreciated. Right, Dean, let's move on to talk about your journey and your career in football. Right back to the very beginning. Let's start from before you joined up with Brighton. What level of football were you playing at prior to the move to Brighton? And can you remember that period of your life, and what kind of, say, offers and trials, etc., were on the table at that point?
Well, I started at Brighton when I was 11, so I was invited to the School of Excellence, 11 years old. Previously to that, I was just playing Sunday League football for a local team in Hastings, because that's where I was born, which developed into various area sizes in Hastings and Bexhill, and then to South East Sussex, and then into Sussex, playing for my school team. So when we were younger, it's different now. I mean, they get restricted amount of games they're allowed to play. I was playing games 4 or 5 games a week. And there was no issue with that. I mean, we used to love doing that. But yeah, 11 years old, I went to Brighton. We used to sign a yearly contract. So there was no 3-4 year deals where the clubs were trying to keep players or the risk of losing players. It was all done on a yearly basis. I had trials, 13, 14s. I nearly went to Aston Villa when I was 14. Nearly went to Nottingham Forest when I was 15. But they didn't quite happen. And I'm glad they didn't, really, because it would have meant of actually moving away from home. And I was quite a shy boy when I was younger, so it wouldn't have been a good move for me. potentially, I think if that had happened, I wouldn't have had a career in the game.
Really?
It affected me at the time. So yeah, I was at Brighton from 11 till 16, and that's when I first signed YTS forms from 16 to 19. So that was the first time I went from a year contract to 3 years contract, and that was full time. So I finished my GCSEs at school, and then within 2 weeks I was doing a pre-season. So that was a wake up call. I must admit, I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, it was. And then them days when you signed as a 16-year-old, when squads are smaller, and I was at Brighton when we were in League Two, budgets were smaller and training grounds are smaller. I'd come from school and we were training with men straight away. You do pre-season with the first team, so it was a real eye-opener straight away.
Yeah. So going back to when you first signed for Brighton, when they do say that they actually want to get you on their youth books, and that you're going to go through the steps, as it were, in age ranges. Do you remember that moment of Brighton offering you something at the time? What was that kind of feeling like?
It was yeah. Obviously, it was a huge moment because it was the first association I'd had with a professional club, and it was the biggest club in the area. I remember we signed contract forms at the Goldston. So we went down to the ground there, which I used to love going to watch games there and visit in the ground. We met the manager at the time. I can't actually remember who the manager was at the time, actually. And we met a couple of players that were playing. So it was all done very professionally. It was very good. But then when we actually started training, the setup wasn't the best setup in the world. We used to train at Seaford, which was on an old style Astro, which was like concrete with sand on, so that was horrendous. And the quality of training wasn't always so good because there was no budgets in them days. There wasn't these huge academies that have all this funding and money and things to flow around and have budgets. It was just kind of very similar, if I'm honest, very similar to Sunday League setups, really.
Yeah.
But with better players, because you were having the best players within the area. So, but it slowly got better during my time there. And by the time I'd signed YTS forms, the whole youth setup had been completely changed. And Martin Hinchinwood had come in, Dean Wilkins had come in, they completely changed how it was like.
Right. So when you mentioned, obviously there was a couple of trials that you had at other clubs. Did that come about because of the games you were playing at the time, and you played against those certain people, or do you remember having scouts coming down to watch your games? What's kind of involved back in the sort of like the mid-90s?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It wasn't through playing for Brighton, because when I was playing at Brighton, we'd only play local teams within, southern teams, so it'd be London teams and things like that.
Sure.
But nowadays, academy players can really only play for their clubs. They're not allowed to play for their schools. Rarely, they don't play for their counties. So you would get scouted playing for your county. Really, I used to play for Sussex, and we weren't a particularly strong team, to be honest. We used to get beat heavily, which was a bit demoralising. But it probably helped me because I probably stood out a little bit more in a bad team.
Yeah.
So it was scouts approaching my dad, and then speaking to my dad, and things were. It wasn't as professional then. A lot of things could be done with phone calls to parents, and they used to approach players, which you're obviously not allowed to do anymore.
No.
The trials would just be set up there, and I ended up at Aston Villa on I think it was a 2-day trial.
Right.
Which was different then. Nowadays they would send you up for 2 weeks and you'd stay up there. I think I went up for a trial. I drove all the way home, then we drove all the way back up the next day because financially didn't have the money to stay in hotels and things like that. So it was interesting. It was a good experience, but it made me actually think, do you know what? I want to stay at Brighton. I want to try and make it in a local area. I wanted to stay at home at the time. So yeah, like I mentioned, I think if I had been asked to sign for them clubs, I don't think it would have quite worked out for me in my career.
Playing in a weaker Sussex counties team, as you put it, Did you ever feel like, as a youngster, that might hamper your ability? I know you said it helped you in the end because it made you stand out, but did you ever feel like taking those demoralising defeats may hamper your ability to progress in the way that you wanted to?
I don't think it would hamper me. I think that it gave me a realisation that I had a lot of hard work to do in terms of the team we played against, the opposition, the quality of players I was playing against. I thought there was a huge bridge to a gap that I needed to fill. So really, if I'm honest, in my personality, it helped me because it made me realise, right, I need to work harder here. I'm probably a good local player at the moment, but if I want to be a professional, I've got a lot of hard work to do. And that helped me because it opened my eyes to the fact that I was quite small when I was younger. So I knew I had to get stronger. I knew I had to get physically more intelligent to use my body better. So at the time, it was really difficult. Don't get me wrong. I used to come home in my car with my dad and think, like, I'm way off this. I'm never going to have a career in this. But then by the time we'd done the 2-hour trip home or whatever, I was like, right, okay. I remember many times getting home after a heavy defeat and then saying to my dad, right, come on, let's go in the garden. I want to go up the park. I want to practice. I need to get better. So it helped me, I think, really helped me.
Help push you on a bit. Did you have other people that actually made it out as well in that team that sort of pushed on and got pro deals and such?
From that team, no. From my age group, there was only Chris McPhee who ended up playing at Brighton and went into to play for Torquay, Exeter, a few non-league teams. But from the Sussex team, as far as I can recall, no, I don't think there was anyone else that made it professionally.
So it does give a real outlook as to, like you say, yourself being the one that was the standout player. And
well, the first game, I'll put it this way, the first game I played for Sussex, we played Kent, and we were 10-0 down at half-time. That's how bad.
Oh, madness. Did they stop
it wasn't a good start.
Oh, dear me.
Brilliant stuff. So you mentioned then at the age of was it 16, you then signed your YTS to stay on at Brighton. What is that moment like? Because you mentioned it there about the way the modern football is, and they sign these kind of youth contracts that kind of tie people into a certain period of time, and once you reach 17, you can then be offered your full professional one. But back then, when you got your YTS, where you were confident that this was the club for you, you wanted to stay on and and have your career, start of your career at least at Brighton?
Definitely. I didn't hesitate when I got the offer. Once I got offered, and the YTS was a 3-year contract. It was, I think my first contract was for, I don't know, £35 a week, which obviously seemed like a lot of money at the time because I wasn't earning anything. Used to get the train over from Hastings to Brighton, which I used to love. Me and Chris McPhee used to do that together. And I love my youth team days. But once I got offered the contract, I was happy because my friends were having to stay on at school and I was going to play full-time football. So that was another brilliant thing because I didn't really enjoy school that much either. It was I knew it was the first step to me potentially having a career in professional football. But it's such a huge difference from even playing 4 or 5 games a week or training every day with your local teams, county teams, even the School of Excellence of Brighton, to actually going into playing full-time football every day, training twice a day with professionals and older players that have been full-time for a couple of years. There was a real difference, and that took a while to adapt, I must admit. And again, there was a lot of doubts in my mind, thinking I'm not sure I'm going to be good enough. But I had them all through my career, and at the time they're really difficult. But I think that's one of the things that really made me work harder and strive and dedicate myself, because I always that fear of not being good enough or someone was better than me, that I always looked at everyone else thinking, right, I need to work harder than everyone else. So it was a good trait to have from an early age.
Do you remember that first training session?
I remember the first run, It wasn't a training session. Pre-season, the balls didn't come out for about 2 weeks when I was younger. So it was a run around the local park, but it felt like it lasted an eternity. And we were all hanging on because you feel as though you're fit. You feel as though you can get through a game, but it was a real difference. And I think it's the closest I've been to being sick, I must admit, because I'm quite a fit guy and I've always been quite fit. But it's the closest I've been to being sick.
So, when you mentioned about those moments of doubt early on in your career, who did you have to kind of turn to look for advice and guidance at that point? And was there anyone at the club in the early days before you signed your contract, made your debut, etc., that was really there to kind of put their arm around you and give you some advice as well?
Difficult to say. I mean, in terms of my doubt and my own personal thoughts, I wouldn't express them. I wouldn't tell anyone. I mean, my parents were brilliant for me. I used to speak to my parents a lot and discuss things with them like we all do. But in terms of the football club, it was different in I'd like to say my era. I sound really old now, but it was different when I was younger. You didn't really express them fears or them doubts. It was more you kind of had to just deal with it and get on with it and find your own way and find your own route. There wasn't anyone you could particularly go to and go, look, I'm struggling with this, I'm finding this hard. You were left to your own devices to figure it out, and that was part of becoming a professional footballer. You need to figure this out for yourself, and if you can, you'll be successful, and if you can't, unfortunately, you'll fall away. Now, I'm not saying that's the right way, because every player is different, every individual is different, and people thrive off different things and how they're treated and how they train and how they see an environment. But that's just the way it was, and it was survival of the fittest at that time.
Definitely. And then I suppose going through the sort of the YTS side of it, you're in training. You're starting to make your mark at the club. We fast forward to your debut. In December 2000. What was it like in the build up to that match? Did you kind of have any inclination that you were going to be involved, like for example in the week prior to the game starting, or was it one of those things you were told the day before? And then what's that build up like to your first professional game, so to speak?
Well, I wasn't told until the day of the game. So it was an evening game, I think it was an evening game if I can remember rightly. And the manager at the time was Mickey Adams, and we used to train, or the first team used to train lightly in the morning before the evening game. So I went into training normally as a YTS. I'm still a YTS player, still a young player. And I was told by the youth team manager I wasn't training with the youth team today. And I was like, okay, what have I done wrong here? Over upset. I'm not in the youth team now. There's a problem. But no, he said, look, you're training with the first team today. And I was like, okay, they must just need an extra body for, I don't know, a few set pieces or something for the game tonight. No, and I was just told by the manager, look, you're involved in the squad tonight. We've been pleased with your progress. We'd like to see you within the first team environment. We'd like to introduce you to the squad. And then I trained, and then I had to go all the way home to get my suit, and then come all the way back, because we used to wear suits in them days. Come all the way back, and then I made my debut. So I didn't find out to the day, so it probably helped me because there was no build up, there was no real nerves or days of thinking, well, I've got to do this. What if this goes wrong? What if this goes right? What am I going to play? Am I not going to play? So it probably helped me, but I didn't find out until the day of the game.
So that before the actual game kicks off, what are management saying to you before you step foot onto the pitch? Because we've had a couple of ex-pros that have been on the show, and Dean Bowditch is one that always stands out, where he was told a lot of information before he came on to make his debut, but he said that none of it was really sinking in because he was just so excited and wanted to get onto that pitch. Do you remember much of what was said before, or were you very similar to him?
No, I don't remember. Yeah, very similar. I don't remember much. I think the manager was obviously giving me instructions and telling me what I needed to do, or don't mess up, or so but it didn't sink in. I was too excited. I was probably too nervous as well, but nervous excitement. And then once you get onto the pitch, it's almost a relief that you've made your debut, to just get that, to get it out of the way. And then once you're on the pitch, it is excitement. But I came crushing down to earth because within about 10 seconds, I remember getting an elbow right across the chest and thinking, right, okay, this is proper men's football now, and that winded me, but probably again helped me because it made me concentrate. It made me think about the game, and I was in the moment then instead of thinking, well, what's it going to be like afterwards? Whenever I was asking that I've made my debut, I was actually in the moment thinking about the game, so that probably helped me.
Do you recall much of the debut when you look back on it now, or was it really just an adrenaline-fueled few minutes, and it's sort of pretty blank from the memory due to everything that was going on in your head at the time?
Yeah, it's pretty blank. I can't remember what I actually was involved in the game, if I touched the ball much, if I did anything. I remember the elbow across the chest, which winded me. I remember that because that hurt. But yeah, in terms of what I did in the game, did I contribute much? I can't really remember. But I remember after the game being told within 5 minutes in the dressing room that I was playing away at Norwich in the reserves tomorrow. So I remember that and thinking, right, okay, that's put my feet back on the ground.
Yeah.
Especially we went there and lost 5-0 as well. Thinking, right,
do you remember much of what management said to you after the game? Were they impressed with it? What are your chats about the future after that game? Is there any conversations like that, or is it, as you said, just right back in with the reserves, just concentrate on what I'm doing?
Yeah, nothing was said by the manager. Nothing was said by the coaching staff. Individually, nothing. There was no congratulations for making debuts. Nothing like that. It was just right. Game's finished. Prepare for the next game. Like I said, told I was playing in the reserves the next day. So it was more. I always felt with Mickey Adams as manager, everything was a test. So I always thought, right, he's testing me now to think, to see what sort of personality I have, see what my character's like. Am I going to think, right, okay, I've made it now. I'm going to be a big time Charlie because I'm in the first team. I'm too good for the reserves. Would I perform the next day in the reserves? Would I moan about having to go all the way to Norwich when I've just played in the first team the night before? So I saw everything with Mickey as a test. So I always thought he was testing me to see, right, okay, let's see what he's made of here. So I took it like that. So thinking, right, I need to perform tomorrow. Obviously didn't because we lost 5-0, but that's what I was trying to do. Mickey was, I really enjoyed working under Mickey Adams. He had a strong personality. He was always, he kept you on your toes at all times.
Do you think that helped?
I was going to say that's pretty much what I was going to say, James.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, do you think that helped at the time, having that kind of manager that wasn't there to kind of give you that pep talk and the big speech after the game, or do you kind of wish that you had someone just to at least give you a couple of good and plus points or anything along those lines at all?
If I'm honest, I'm not the best with praise. If I'm honest, I didn't seek praise out. I wasn't that comfortable with it. Mickey, you're always good with Mickey. His praise was he wouldn't say anything to you. So if he's not moaning at you or wasn't criticising you, you've done all right. So he didn't say anything to me after the game. So I was thinking, right, I've not messed up at least. So I've still got a chance at the club with him being manager. But yeah, I didn't need them big speeches. I didn't need praise. I was always one that was pretty self-critical. If I felt as though I'd done okay, then I must have done okay. So I always went with that judgment.
Brilliant stuff. And then I've got down on here that over the next season and a bit, it's mainly reserve football for you before you're then offered your first professional contract by the club in May 2002. So what's that moment like to go from YTS to getting that first contract? Is it just a sense of relief, or was this the point where you're like, right, I've now done it, but I need to seriously buckle down? What's going through your head when that contract's on the table?
Relief, yeah, it is relief because it's the one thing that because technically a YTS player, you're full time, but you're not a professional. So the first. As a youngster, I wanted to become a professional footballer. I wanted to be a professional footballer, and this was the first, another box ticked to get into achieving that. So yeah, it was a bit of a relief. Obviously, I was very, very happy. Peter Taylor was manager at the time. We'd just been promoted to the Championship from League One. So it was quite an exciting time at the football club. And, you know, there was it's not like nowadays where you get agents involved, and there was no negotiations. It was a contract put across the table. You were told what you were getting paid, and that was it, really. There was there's no, right, you need to speak to my agent. I want a longer contract. I want to negotiate this. No, I think I signed for £250 a week, which was a huge jump from going from £35-50 a week to £250. So, and I think I signed a 2-year deal. I went away in the summer, really, really happy. Peter Taylor actually left the club then. So there was some doubt, thinking, right, okay, a new manager's going to come in. Am I going to get the contract still? Is it still going to be valid? But no, the club honoured it. I got the contract. Martin Hinchwood got the job, who was actually my youth team manager. So it worked out really well for me in the end. So yeah, it was an amazing feeling. But it was, again, another box ticked. But then you're starting again. That's what happens in football. YTS, moving clubs, moving up a level, coming down a level, promotions, relegations. You're always starting a new chapter, and this was just another start of a chapter of trying to build a career in the game.
Definitely. Sorry, go on.
That was 18 years ago now.
Yeah,
that happened. Going through football in your career, football is immeasurably different now to what it was then.
Yeah,
at that level, do you see sort of firsthand the differences and how hard it is maybe for young players now to get their pro deals, and how much different it is for them compared to what it was like for you?
I would say, if I'm honest, I would say it's easier to get. This is going to sound really silly. In the modern day football and within the academies and the size of squads there are, I would say it's easier to get a professional contract. I'd say it's easier to get a contract. I'd say it's harder to get game time. It's harder to play, and it's harder to get in the first team. But I believe it's easier to get a contract. You've got younger players now that get put on long contracts, large amounts of money, and they're nowhere near the first team. It's more the clubs do it now, especially at the higher level. They do it out of fear that they can't get a decision wrong with a player.
Yeah, it's an insurance policy, isn't it?
Yeah, they see ability in a player. They think, right, okay, he's not developed yet. We'll give him a couple of more years. He's improving all the time. Or there's a player that's brilliant for one game, terrible for two, but he has got raw ability. Clubs just love that security or they don't want to be seen as the club that have let a player go that turns out to be a superstar. So I would say it's easier to get a contract than in my day, because there was budgets and you wouldn't go over them budgets. So my YTS group, there were 6 of us going for pro contracts, and only 2 of us could get it. That was it. It wasn't. If there was 3 of you that were brilliant, look, sorry, the budget is for 2 of them. You need to choose 2 players, and that's how it worked in them days.
Wow,
very different.
Who was the other person that got the? You can remember who was the other person that got the?
It's Chris McPhee. So me and Chris. Yeah, it was me and Chris McPhee. So both from Hastings, both went to school together. Both grew up together, really good friends, still good friends to this day.
So that must have been so special.
Yeah, it was good. It was a really, really good feeling, because we both signed at 11 years old. We've been through the whole journey together. So yeah, and we were close friends. And the families were close because they'd obviously spent a lot of time together. So yeah, it was a really special moment. But in football, in sports, probably life, you don't really get a chance to enjoy things because it's just on to the next thing.
Definitely. Throughout that first season, then, as you mentioned, Brighton are now in what was the first division back then. Do you think that during that first season of your pro contract, because the club had just made that step up, do you think that maybe that was harder to possibly break into the first team at that point? Because I know you made your debut, etc. But from a personal perspective, do you think maybe playing in the higher division limited your kind of impact straight away?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because you're always as a manager, especially with Martin Hinchwood being manager. It was his first job as a first team manager. So where before he'd maybe been a youth team and director of football, he was always promoting to give youngsters a chance. It's different when you're personally in the hot seat yourself. And yes, it was a step up. I'd never been tested at that level. I'd been tested. I'd not played many. I've made many appearances in the level below. So
yeah,
if I'm honest, I probably wasn't ready. I mean, I started 2 games, I think, 3 games in the Championship that year, and then Martin got sacked and Steve Coppell came in, and Steve Coppell was really honest with me. He said what I've just said. He said, I don't think you're ready yet. We're in a relegation battle. This is going to be a tough season. We're one of the favourites to go down. We're losing a lot of games. I need to bring experienced players in, and you're not really going to be part of this. So that's when I ended up going out on loan. But I enjoyed. Steve Coppell was good. He was honest. He was honest with me, and he helped me. But he probably did help me because I wouldn't have been ready. I wasn't ready for that level at that age, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the form prior to Steve Coppell coming in. You won the first game, drew the second game, and then there was 10 defeats in a row after that point. So from a personal perspective, obviously, as I said, you then made your league debut, and you get your first goal prior to it. Just talk to me about the first goal. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that part. And Adam, you're going to love this. Guess who he scored against?
I hope it was Norwich, but
no, it wasn't. It was Ipswich.
Cheers, mate. Yeah.
So,
how many more guests are we going to have on here that their first goal came against Ipswich?
Well, it does seem to be a bit of a regular theme, doesn't it? It really does. So
too easy. That's the problem.
Talk us through that moment of. I know the team lost on the day, but you getting that first goal. What's your kind of head like? Where you've got your contract, you made your league debut, you're now scoring in the first team. How are you feeling after that game?
Amazing. It wasn't the perfect debut because we didn't win the game. I think we lost 3-1 in the end. But really, really enjoyed it. Really excited. I felt I was really grateful for the opportunity. And it's one of those things in football. If you can, the first few minutes or 5 minutes, if you can have a really good first touch or a good pass or make a good tackle, it does settle you down. I think I scored, I don't know, maybe after 8 or 9 minutes, something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
To be honest, if I don't know if you've seen a goal, it barely crossed the line. I don't think it touched the net. So obviously, it was a goal, but it wasn't the most. It wasn't the best goal in the world. But I celebrated like I probably scored a 30-yard screamer.
It's got to be done, though, really, hasn't it? It's got to be done.
Yeah, of course it has. And I actually played really well that night, and we lost 3-1, unfortunately, but. It was a decent Ipswich team playing. I was playing against, I think Ambrose was playing. I think Bent played. I think when Fanini George was there, he played. And I played well that night. And
Fanini George only ever had one decent game in him, though. That was the problem.
That's speaking from a fan's perspective. Adam.
Yeah.
Speaking from somebody's on the pitch, as we found out. Podcast there.
But no, it was a good experience. I really enjoyed my debut, and it's weird. I mean, you get opened up after the game. I got opened up to the world of football. Obviously, you get a bit of a media attention. People want interviews off you. I had an agent at the time. Then there was a couple of clubs just from one. That's just from one appearance. There was a couple of clubs interested in me because I was young and I was playing in the first team and I'd scored on my full debut and things. So. You get open up to the world of how football potentially works and what it's not just playing 90 minutes on the pitch. It's what the other things, because I was, like I mentioned, I was pretty shy. I didn't like doing media stuff. I didn't want to be speaking in the press because I had this weird feeling that I would say something wrong and it would affect my career, which is obviously not true and rubbish, but because you're new to it, and I didn't want anything affecting my career. I shied away from the interviews to start with.
Did it do you like a lot of good though, personally, to know, like you say, you've played against a good team, you've come in, you've scored. Like mentally, that must be like a huge boost to know that not only have you made that debut, you've made a really good contribution to the team, and you've done it against what are a strong team on the pitch. Like that's a good recipe for sort of giving yourself a kick up the backside and saying, "Look, I can do this."
Yeah, it definitely was. It was definitely a confidence boost, and it gave me, it did give me real belief that I could play at that level, and it was good. It was a good feeling, thinking all that hard work that you've been working through all your life, and to play against them players in a proper professional game at that level, that I could compete against them players. So yeah, I did. I was really high after the game, and it gave me a real set. And like any club, they love a young player, a local player coming through. So yeah, it felt really, really good at the time. But yeah, I didn't get many more appearances after that appearance. I think I played maybe 2 more games that season, 3 more maybe.
Yeah.
But it was part of my development, and I look back at it now, and I think it helped me going out on loan, and I enjoyed my loan spell. So I wouldn't change it.
Yeah. I was just going to ask one question on that before we move on to the Steve Coppell conversation. When you then start realising that clubs are interested in you, and you've got your agent talking to you at that point, is there any temptation to kind of engage in those kind of conversations, or are you so focused and you're happy where you are at Brighton at this particular point?
At that particular point, I changed. I was very ambitious then. I was very, very ambitious. Obviously, like every player, you want to play as hard as you can.
Sure.
And it was the clubs, you were talking about a top flight club who was interested in me at the time, who was spending a lot. So it was Leeds United at the time. They was like under David. I think it was under David O'Leary. They were spending a lot of money on younger players. I think if you remember at the time.
Yeah.
And I'd only played 1 game. They'd just shown an interest. So I think if I'd played maybe 4, 5, 6 consistent games on a consecutive basis and got a bit of a rhythm going and performed well, there may have been solid interest. So there wasn't really any conversations to have with the club or Steve Coppell. There was never going to be an offer because it had been a one-off performance where I'd played well, and they'd shown some interest to my agent, but not to the club. And there's a difference there, really.
Yeah, fair enough. So as you mentioned, you've gone from then having your youth team manager who is in control of the first team around you and guiding you. Steve Coppell then comes in. You mentioned that conversation where he's very honest and said that, this is going to be a really tough season for everyone kind of moving forward. At that point, I know you moved out on loan the following season, but did you want to have a loan spell away from the club just to get some game time, or did they want to keep you in and around the first team just to keep your development with what they could see under their own noses, so to speak?
Yeah, they wanted to keep me around the first team. So they wanted me to learn off the more experienced players. It was difficult at that time because Steve Coppell was honest with me and said, "Look, you're not going to play. I need more experienced players. We're in a relegation battle." And I understood that. And I was training with the first team and training pretty well. But I would never travel with the squad. So it was difficult for me. I was like, well, I'm learning in training, but I'm only really going to learn if I travel with the squad, if I get more familiar with the players, I get comfortable in the environment, if I see the games away from home as well. That's what I personally felt, but I didn't get the opportunity to do that. So I felt like a bit of a training player.
Does that difficulty ever turn into frustration?
Yeah, of course. I mean, huge frustration. Whether I voiced that, I was only young, so it was difficult.
Yeah, I suppose that's where I was going with it. How can you control that frustration in terms of being able to voice it and letting people know that you want to crack on? Because it sounds like you were dead ambitious, and you'd had that taste of the first team by then.
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, it was personal frustration. I didn't voice it. I mean, it was just. I would probably go home and speak to my parents or friends and voice my frustration to them. But I always felt I had a chance. I always felt as though if I train hard enough, I'll get a chance. I'll get an opportunity. And it just didn't happen. And we got relegated that year. And then Steve Coppell stayed on and the team started to see the following season really, really well. So I didn't get near the first team again. And it was a difficult period, I must admit. I did lose a little bit of love for football because I lost a little bit of belief in myself and a little bit of belief in the game. That I was always told in life that if you work hard, you'll get your rewards. And I wasn't quite getting them. But the one thing you learn is that you don't necessarily get your rewards straight away. They're going to come. You just don't know when.
So at the end of obviously you mentioned they get relegated. They drop down into Division 2. At the end of that season, when Steve Coppell, beginning of the following season rather, that they're starting off a campaign quite well. The loan moves, did you instigate that, or was that the club saying, we now need you to go out and get some first team football? Because by this point, you must be thinking, well, you've dropped down a level. I now want to be involved in some capacity.
Yeah, it was. We were to change the manager. So Steve Coppell, I think, left halfway through the season. I think he went to Reading.
Right.
And Mark McGee came in and took the reins, and I wasn't part of his plans either. And you do get your confidence is hit there, and you do get doubt. And you think, well, that's two managers that don't really fancy me as a player, or don't believe that I'm ready. And other youngsters at that time were getting an opportunity. Dan Harding was playing, Adam Hinchelwood was playing, Adam Virgo was playing. So it was difficult to take, I must admit, and that was a point where I lost a little bit of love for the game. And my youth team manager, Dean Wilkins, was brilliant for me. That's where I did get some help and did get some guidance and advice, and someone I could always go to then and speak to him. And I really appreciated his opinion and his advice. And his was like, you just need to go out on loan. You need to go and play some football. You need to find your love again for the game. And thankfully, I played a reserve game. I can't think it was against, but Aldershot were there watching, and within an hour after the game, I was told of their interest, and the next day I signed on loan. And it was probably the best thing I ever did, because I love my time at Aldershot, and then I love my time at Leyton Orient, so it really helped me.
Is it just then getting back into a competitive environment rather than just being part of that training session day in, day out? No games to go to, nothing on the weekend to kind of then look. I know you're playing the reserves, etc., but like the proper competitive side of things, the loan moves, were they just, like you said, they were the thing that you needed, but it's just to get back into that competitive environment, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, and it gives you routine and it gives you focus as well, because you're training all week for a focus of a game of the weekend that you know you're going to be part of, whether you're starting or you're on the bench or you're in the squad. That's your focus, and it's so hard. You do your job all week, and then it's almost like you can't do what you train for at the weekend, which is the main part. So, yeah, it was brilliant to go on loan first, and it was difficult, to be honest, because when I first went to Aldershot, the first two games I didn't start too well because I hadn't been playing games. And reserve team football was very different to first team football. But the manager, Terry Brown, was really good with me. He was like, look, I brought you into play, so you're going to play. And he just stuck with me. And then within 3 or 4 games, I'd found my form and started playing really well. So I was fortunate in that respect, because he signed me, and he could have thought, oh no, what have we signed here? Another youngster that's got talent that doesn't perform on a game day. But no, he was great with me, and he stuck by me and believed in me. So that really helped me.
You wanted to stay on with Aldershot, didn't you? If what I've read is correct, you obviously you wanted to extend the loan for the rest of the season. Is that right?
Yeah, I wanted to stay at Aldershot because I thought it was helping me. It was helping my development. They had some really good older experienced players within the dressing room, and they were brilliant with me. And they really helped me settle. They helped me enjoy the game again. We used to train twice a week, and I used to enjoy that because it was different. Again, it was different. And I wanted to stay for the rest of the season. We got some good results together. I was enjoying the environment. I was smiling again. But Leyton Orient wanted me, and the manager at Leyton Orient was Martin Ling, and Ian Calderhouse were there, and they were both ex-Brighton players, so they knew the Brighton staff pretty well. And I think they encouraged and persuaded Brighton to persuade me to go on loan to Leyton Orient. So, which worked out. It was a step up. I'd gone from the National League now to League 2, so it was a step up. But at the time, I was settled and I wanted to stay, but the club made the decision that I had to go to Leyton Orient.
So then you make that step up to League 2. You have your spell at Leyton Orient for the rest of that season. The club then offer you Brighton offer you a contract at the end of the season. So you must have done something to have impressed them to want that, for them to give you a new contract. What kind of conversations is being had when you are looking to talk about that contract? Are they then saying, right, this is now your time to get in amongst the first team?
I wish it was that. It wasn't that. It was we'd just been promoted, so again, I seem to sign contracts when we were getting promoted, but we got Mark McGee. We'd won at the playoffs. We beat Bristol City in the playoff final at Millennium Stadium, and I'd been offered a contract, I think, a month previous to that. So I got offered a 1-year contract. The club wanted to keep me, wanted to see my development, wanted me to come back and see if I could actually get near the first team at Brighton after my loan spells.
Right.
We got promoted, and I remember going into the office to see Mark McGee. You'd always have your meetings at the end of the season to talk through the season, how your development, your contracts. And they actually reduced the contract to 3 months. So I got offered a year's contract, and then within one meeting, 5 minutes of the meeting, he just said, look, we're going to offer you a 3-month contract. We're not giving you a year. What do you think about that? Not go away and have a think about it. We wanted to know then. But again, I think he was an older type. He was just testing me. He was testing me to see how much I wanted to come back to the club. And I paused for a bit, and I must admit, I said, look, I need some time to think about it. And obviously, I went home and spoke to my parents, and they were just like, do you know what? Look, you might never get an opportunity at this level again. You might never get an opportunity at Brighton again. They're offering you 3 months. Why don't you get yourself as fit as you possibly can? Concentrate, dedicate as much as you possibly can, and give it a go. And that's what I did. I signed the 3-month contract, which was on reduced terms. I wasn't on a lot of money anyway, but it was even less money. But the money didn't matter. I was living at home. It wasn't. I was doing it because I wanted to play football. So I signed a 3-month contract and went back for pre-season as fit as I possibly could, and the rest is history, really. Yeah.
You then start off the season quite well, don't you? You impress. They then obviously decide to keep you on. You make quite a few appearances in that season. If again what I've got is correct on here, you end up making what I've got on here nearly 30 appearances for the club.
Yeah, I didn't start the season, but I think after about 6 games, I came into the team and played. It was towards the end of my contract, towards the end of the 3 months. I thought, all right, I'm not going to get a new contract, and that helped me a little bit. I kind of relaxed and kind of accepted it, but then started performing better. But the team were losing, and then I got in the team and played a good amount of games, consistent amount of games, and then I came out of the team again a little bit, and then finished really strongly. Where we ended up staying up in the Championship. We were odds-on favourite to go down because we didn't have a big squad or a large budget, but he ended up scoring a few goals towards the end of that season as well, playing off the left wing, which was an interesting position really, because I'm probably the slowest left winger ever to play in a professional game. So it was, I wasn't taking anyone on, to put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. And then I suppose throughout the rest of your time at Brighton in that first spell, the club have that relegation, and they then spend a little bit of time in League One. How do you sum up that rest of that first spell at Brighton?
Well, we went down. Obviously, Mark McGee was still manager. We started off the season slowly, didn't get performance. He left the club, got the sack, and then Dean Wilkins got the job, who was again my old youth team manager. He made me captain straight away, which was brilliant. I used to love being captain of all the clubs that I've been at, and the clubs I've captained, and used to take great pride in wearing the armband. So we finished the season pretty strongly, and ended up, Dino was very much for playing the younger players and developing the younger players, and he actually did that. He put the younger players in the first team, so we had a really, really young squad, but we performed well. We finished the season pretty strong, and did okay in League One, held our own in the end, playing some really, really good football. But I was captain of the club then I think I was probably 21, 22 at the time. So it was a real privilege.
What is that responsibility like at that age? Like, obviously there would have been some older heads in the dressing room at the time. Was there any sort of animosity from those guys thinking that they should have been made captain, or what's the dressing room like at that stage?
It was all right. I was fortunate and very lucky in the fact that the dressing room was really mixed. So there was some experienced players in there who were probably coming towards their end of their career at Brighton, but were strong personalities. But we had a lot of youngsters, like I said, in the group. So really, I was captaining the younger boys, really, and there was more younger players within the starting 11 than the experienced players. So yeah, it was difficult, but one thing it did, like I said previously, I was quite shy, but the captaincy made me grow up really quickly, and I did have to come out of my shell, and I really did. I became more vocal, especially on the pitch. Was never hugely vocal off the pitch, but I started to lead by example on the pitch, and it really helped me. So the older players were fine, if I'm honest, and they were great in the end. Probably first couple of weeks they were probably in shock because a younger player being captain, but no, after that they were brilliant, and really, really helped me.
Brilliant. We then are going to fast forward onto the 2007-8 season. Halfway through that particular season, you end up moving to Colchester.
Yeah.
If what I've read is correct, and I don't know, correct me if this is wrong, but you were wanting to go to a club that were trying to get. You didn't maybe feel that the ambition was right at the club. Is that correct? Because there was a contract offer on the table, but it didn't appear as if the step up to the next division was really going to happen at Brighton. Is that correct?
That's what was written. It's not what's good. No, that's not. That wasn't my thinking at the time. No, that's what was portrayed. And no, my there was a contract on the table. There was discussions. I had interest from clubs from a higher division at the time, who had put offers into the club, weren't agreed, weren't high enough. And my only discussion with the football club was that I knew there was you got to remember, I was captain of the football club. I'd been player of the season the year before. I was playing week in and week out, and the only thing I asked was I wanted to be on the same money as everyone else at the football club, because I was still on my previous contract at the time. So I wasn't trying to be greedy. I wasn't asking for more money. I wasn't saying the club need to be more ambitious to sign players, because we were playing at Withdean where there was financial difficulties in the club, and I would never say that at the time because I'd been given my chance from the youth team. So no, that's not true. My only request was that I would get the same money as other players in the squad, not a penny more, just the same. And for whatever reason, the club didn't feel as though I warranted that. They didn't want to pay me that. And they were quite happy to sell me. So I've got no issue with that.
Bizarre concerning your position in the squad.
Well, the thing is,
asking for parity with other players is completely not unreasonable.
No, I didn't think so at the time as well. But the club and the chairman and the directors obviously had a different opinion. Maybe they didn't rate me as a player. Maybe they didn't think I was worthy of that amount. Who knows? But they just signed Glenn Murray as well, and they'd spent a bit of money on Glenn Murray. And I think the idea behind that was the money they spent on Glenn, they could recoup by selling me. Because, like I said, there wasn't a lot of money at the football club. There wasn't a huge budget. So any money they spent, they've got to try and get back in. So when I suddenly said, right, okay, I think it was easier for them to portray that I wanted the club to be more ambitious. I wanted the club to do this and make me a bit of a scapegoat. But I've got no problem with that at all. It's not an issue with me. That's football. That's the industry. I had an opportunity to go to a higher level football club, and I think it worked well for me, and it worked out well for the club. So everyone really should have been happy for the situation. Why it had to come out like that in the media, I don't know, but there we go.
At the time, did you want to speak out and clarify that particular situation? Because I had a very similar conversation with Paul Hayes, and he was saying about during his time in the game where stories were being written about him, which he said that they're not true. I wanted to say something, but if I did, it would actually damage my reputation more if I came out and started arguing.
Paul was very conscious, wasn't he, of what the media could do to his career if he said that he spoke out.
Yeah, it is. It's more. I wouldn't say necessarily it's what the media can do to your career. It's more the fact that how other managers and other chairmen will see your personality and your character. So in terms of the bigger picture, you know, you could be lucky, you could be a one club man, but you're probably going to move to 3, 4, 5, 6 different clubs. And if you start getting a reputation as a difficult player to deal with, a difficult player to negotiate with, it's going to put other managers and other chairmen off. So I was always conscious, a bit like you're saying with Paul there, I was always conscious what other people would think, because I was trying to protect my career. So for me, you just as a player, you just have to take it. It's part and parcel of being within the game. And things were written, but they're not. You know, no one's written anything bad about me. It's just a story saying that I wanted the club to be more ambitious. Yeah, the fans don't like that, and it looks bad on me, but you know, nothing bad's really happened. You get over it and you move on. You get forgotten very quickly by football. So it didn't have a huge effect on me. But yeah, in answer to your question, sometimes you do feel like you would love to speak out and actually say what happened. But is it really going to change anything? Is it going to benefit anyone? Probably not.
No, that's absolutely fair enough. Like I said, I thought I'd pose the question that I posed to Paul at the time. It's just interesting because us as fans, and Adam will probably back me on this, the moment you read a story, you're waiting for the player to respond, aren't you? You're waiting to get that kind of clarification, and then when it doesn't happen, you as a fan think, well, it must be true. It must be true. It must be true. If he's not responding, it must be true.
Yeah.
So I said it's just interesting to get, you know, clarity on that particular story. But you moved to Colchester. Obviously, they've come off the previous season, off a very successful season. Then when you're moving to the club, they're not enjoying the best of times, but it is a higher division. So why Colchester? Why did you decide to go to Colchester? And were there other offers on at the time when Colchester's offer was on the table?
Yeah. So initially, when I was going to Sheffield United at the time, when Brian Robson was manager. Brian Robson got the sack, so that never happened. That fell through, and Colchester came in with an additional bid. I went and met the manager, Guy Williams, and
club legend.
Yeah, and I met the chairman, who was a really, really nice guy, really ambitious. They showed me around. They were building a new stadium, so they showed me around a new stadium. They'd invested in money. You know, Teddy Sheringham was there at the time. They bought other players, so it was an exciting place to be at, and it was something I was excited about joining. The chairman was really, really ambitious to try and move the club. He knew that season at the time they were in a little bit of a difficult situation, but they felt as though they could survive with signing a couple of players in January. It just didn't quite happen, but I was excited about signing Colchester. I really was. They had a good group of players. We just couldn't string a run of results together at the time, unfortunately. But it was a move up for me personally, a move up a division. Like I say, I was ambitious, so I loved my time at Colchester, and I really enjoyed the move, and I was excited about the move. And but it was difficult, I must admit, because it was my first experience of leaving Brighton. Really, I'd been away on loan. I'd left the club on loan, but I always knew as a loan player I was going back to Brighton. This was final. This was definite. So once I'd actually signed the contract, and actually when I went to Colchester, I was injured, which made it even more difficult. I was injured at the time, so I was at the club probably 4 weeks before I played. So it's difficult to settle into the group then. The players are always thinking, well, who's this player? We just spent some money on this player. He's coming injured. And so, it was a challenge to start with, but I loved my time at Colchester, I really did.
Yeah. I suppose, really, following that, you mentioned about the difficulties to settle in to a squad. Right early on, we had Darren Eady on, was our latest guest, and he mentioned about moving away from the club for the first time, which was Norwich, to go to Leicester, and he spoke of the difficulties of adjusting to a new club. How quickly did it kind of take for you to settle in after that initial period of being injured? Right, when you did move there.
Yeah, it was a challenge. It was difficult because it was my first time moving away from my local area. So I'd lived in Hastings all my life. I was living with my girlfriend at the time. We just bought a new house together, and I moved away. She didn't move straight up because she was at university at the time.
Right.
So I was up there in a hotel, which is difficult as well.
Yeah.
I was injured. I didn't know any of the players, which made it even more difficult. So yeah, it was a challenging time because you always want to make a good first impression, and that's, you don't know people, so you're a little bit shy, you're a little bit uneasy, you don't really know where you fit into the dressing room, what your role is within the dressing room. There's some pressure on you to perform, but when you can't perform and you're just sitting on the treatment table, and the club have just spent a decent amount of money on you, I think it was probably a record signing at the time, if I'm honest. Yeah, it was difficult, but they were a really good group of lads. And once I did get myself fit and I got a bit of form going, like I say, I really enjoyed my time there. And it was brilliant working with a player like Teddy Sheringham. I mean, that was an amazing experience.
I can imagine.
I've got a few mates that are Colchester fans, and I told them that we'd got you coming on, and they described you as an absolute baller for them. So they look back on your time there quite fondly. Like, in terms of actually settling into playing, getting used to a new way of working, how was that for you, having come away from Brighton and then just settling into a new team ethos altogether?
In terms of playing styles and training styles, I was lucky because the methods were pretty similar to Brighton.
Right.
So you had Dean Wilkins and you had Grant Williams, and they were both very good coaches. So it was all football related, and the setups and the routines during the week were very similar, and we played the same formation. So from that point of view, it was pretty easy.
Yeah.
There were some good players at Colchester at the time, really good players. So when you're playing with good players, you become a better player yourself. So from that point of view, as settling in, I found that okay. It was just getting myself fit again, and getting myself up to speed. That was the difficult thing because I was coming back into a squad that were match fit, half a season fit, and I'd missed, 6, 7, 8 weeks of training. So I wasn't even probably training fit when I first went back in. And you try too hard. You try and do things that are probably not natural. And that was where it was difficult because I just felt as though everyone was judging me because they were expecting more. But you get over that quickly. That's just part and parcel of football, or having a new job. So I got over that pretty quickly, and it made me grow up quickly. And it was another experience where I had to come out of my shell and come out and grow up and develop as a person, as a player.
That season after the relegation then is a solid enough season for Colchester. I'm not saying in a disrespectful way, but they finished mid-table, 12th in the league. The following summer then, when the club are entering the second year of League One, if I've got this down correctly, you had Paul Lambert, who was in charge at the time.
Yeah.
He leaves on the 18th of August to join my team, Norwich.
Yeah.
The day after, you leave to go to Southampton.
Yeah.
So was the move to Southampton, was that something that happened as a result of the manager going, or was this something that had been built up over a period of was it a couple of weeks into the works?
Yeah, it'd been going on for a few weeks, to be honest. I knew of the interest from Southampton. The club knew of the interest from Southampton. I was actually, they offered me a new contract at Colchester. I was 2 years into a 3-year deal, I think, and they'd offered me another 3-year deal contract. So we were negotiating at the time because I wasn't definitely leaving to go to Southampton. I was very interested, obviously, because it's a huge football club. But I was enjoying working under Paul Lambert. I think he's a really, really good manager. I love my time working under Paul Lambert. And then we played Norwich on the first game of the season and beat them 7-1.
Yes, you did.
Sorry to mention that.
No, in all honesty, everything worked out for the best in the end because we got Lambert. So
yeah, exactly.
At the time, it was a great thing to happen.
Yeah. So he obviously knew of the interest from Southampton, and then the day he left to go to Norwich, he actually rang me and said, like, "I'd love you to come to Norwich with me."
Wow.
But I think I was too far down the line with Southampton. Then I think the club had just agreed the fee with Southampton, and it was a chance to move a little bit closer to home, back down south again.
I was just going to say, was that a big factor in deciding to go to Southampton? Because, like,
yeah,
as much as I love Norwich, it is in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing around it. If you don't come here for football, like, there's no other reason to attract you to Norfolk. I'm not going to.
It was difficult. It was a difficult decision because, one, I really, really enjoyed working under Paul Lambert. I think he brought the best out of me. He really improved me as a player. So I felt as though I owed him something. I felt as though I wanted to keep developing under him. Southampton at the time were on -10 in League One as well. So I was going from top of the table at Colchester to bottom of the league at Southampton on -10. But once I met the owners and the manager, actually I didn't meet the manager until I signed, but once I met the owners and spoke to the manager, I was very keen to sign for Southampton. So, but it was difficult leaving Colchester because we just had our first child, my daughter. We were really, really happy and settled in the area. So it wasn't an easy decision. It was a decision obviously based on a career decision that I was going to a football club that could really develop and really maybe, I'd be able to achieve the dream of getting to the top level. So once I knew the interest, once it'd been accepted, I was keen to get to Southampton,
Yeah, definitely. And despite that, despite the fact that they started off with -10, the club ended up finishing in 7th place. So on the pitch, the results are brilliant. What was it like working under Alan Pardew? I'd love to know because he's taken a bit of a reputational damage over the last few years. That's safe to say. But what was he like working under?
I enjoyed it. I must admit, I enjoyed it. He lets you know he's the manager, so he let you know he's in charge, which I've got no issue with, no problem at all. He's really direct, but in an honest way. So he'll tell you how it is, and again, I quite like that as a player. But yeah, he was. I wouldn't say everyone loved him, but he was. I enjoyed working as a manager, and I think he made a lot of sense as a manager. And he did well at Southampton when we first came in. He took us from -10. We won the Paints Trophy that year at Wembley. We finished 7th, just outside the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he's actually a really good coach, Alan. He wouldn't get involved in necessarily the first bit of training or keep ball sessions or shooting sessions, but his pattern of play and his 11v11 coaching was really, really good. You went into a game knowing exactly what he wanted from you and exactly what he wanted from your position. So I wouldn't say I had a close relationship with Alan, but I really respected him as a manager and I enjoyed working under him.
Yeah, definitely. The following 2 seasons for the club, after coming off the back of, just finishing outside the playoffs, as you said, winning the Paint Trophy final, back-to-back promotions. I mean, that in itself, is very, very difficult to do. What is it like being at a club with that much momentum behind them? Like, is it just like you're untouchable?
Yeah, it felt like that at the time. I mean, both times we came second. So the League One campaign the following season, obviously Alan got sacked after about 6 games. And Nigel Adkins came in, and we didn't start particularly well under him because we changed how we played. We were suddenly playing out from the back. We were trying to play total soccer. It was a lot of possession football, but progressive possession, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it took us a little while to get used to that. We changed the formation as well. But once we got our momentum, things clicked, we had such good players there. We had such real quality, and especially in League One. I mean, most of them have gone on to play international football, so you can see how good they were. And once we started winning games, once we started scoring goals, once the confidence was up within the group, yeah, we did feel unstoppable that first season. Once we got the promotion and from League One to the Championship, and we really had that belief and justification that we were a good team and we were good players, we went into that Championship season thinking we were going to get promoted. I know that sounds silly coming up from League One, but we just really felt as though we had momentum and we were good enough to compete at that level. And we started off like a house on fire.
I've heard it from Norwich players when they were under Paul Lambert that season after going up from League One. They all knew that after 10, 15 games in the Championship that they were going up. They just knew it. There was something about the club, and I think, like I said, you just get that feeling, don't you? I suppose, like, obviously being in amongst the camp, you'll know more than we will, but you just know, don't you?
It is, and you're going to laugh again. We probably knew after we played Ipswich away.
Cheers, mate.
Dean, I'm loving you more and more as the minutes are going by.
We played Ipswich away. I think it was the third or fourth game of the season. I think we were 3-0 up at half time, and it could have been about 8 or 9. But it wasn't due to Ipswich being poor. We were just exceptional. And things really clicked then. We'd beaten Leeds previous to that. I think we'd beaten Birmingham. So we'd really, you kind of like, we knew we were good enough and we knew that we could compete, but we proved it. And the biggest thing in football, whatever level you're playing at, is can you score goals? If you can score goals, you're always going to have games where you can keep clean sheets. But if you can score goals, and we had players in the team who could score goals, Ricky Lambert, Adam Lallana, Lee Barnard, Billy Sharp, David Connolly.
It's a great team, wasn't it?
The list goes on. It was we had real quality going forward. So teams just became scared of playing us, and we just built up a reputation very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. After that season, then you've got promoted to the Premier League. For you as an individual to say that you finally made it up to that point during the summer, when you're in pre-season, where is your head at in terms of are you on top of the world at that point, or what were you feeling going into that opening season in the Premier League?
Yeah, I was definitely on top of the world. It was. My ultimate ambition as a youngster was to try and get to the Premier League, to try and play in the Premier League. That was my ambition. I started off in League Two, so it seemed a million miles away. So to actually achieve that as captain of the football club, I was flying high. I was excited. I just had my second child as well within that summer, so we were settled in Hampshire. Things were fantastic. But excited going into that season. A little bit nervous as well because we'd had our end of season meetings, like I previously mentioned to you, that every manager does and every club does. And the manager mentioned that he was going to bring a midfield player in to add extra competition. He was going to bring Jack Cork in. He actually told me he was going to bring him in. So
really?
Excited but nervous and. Sorry, not Jack Cork. Jack Cork was all. I can't think. We brought Stephen Davis in. Sorry. And so I was a little bit nervous for my position, and we had James Ward-Prowse coming through the youth system as well. But I was excited for pre-season, excited to get back, and excited to test myself at the top level.
Okay. Into that season.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Sorry, go on.
I was saying, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, how far into pre-season are you then becoming aware that you're not in the first team picture, so to speak? And how did the loan move to Brighton then come about? What conversations are you having at the time about possibly wanting to stay at Southampton and play that season in the Premier League?
It was the club. The club were really good with me, if I'm honest. Southampton were really good with me. The manager was up front with me. I understood that probably I wasn't going to be first pick anymore because you had Morgan Sliding in there, you had Jack Cork, You had Stephen Davis, like I said. You had James Ward-Prowse coming through. There was Richard Chaplow there. So there was real competition for places. I played every pre-season game, so I didn't necessarily feel as though I'd be leaving the club. There'd been a few approaches from other clubs for me. So I got an inkling I didn't know whether the club were offering me out to other clubs. I didn't know. My squad number was changed. So yeah, you get an inkling that you're not potentially part of the plans. The first game of the season, we had Man City away. I was told probably 4 hours before kickoff that I wasn't going to be involved in the squad and I wasn't going to be captain anymore. So that was difficult to take. But like I said, the club were good with me because they were honest with me. They didn't try and hide anything. They told me, they informed me of what was going on. And then Brighton came in for me on loan. And I wanted to go back to the club because I didn't leave on the best terms, as we spoke about. And I wanted to go back and play in the new stadium.
Yeah.
And the club were good with me because there was a bit of difficulty, a bit of tension between Brighton and Southampton at that time. The managers didn't really get on. The clubs had clashed. Two southern clubs. So the club helped me make that loan move happen once I made it clear that I wanted to leave because I wasn't going to be part of the plans of Southampton. So it was difficult to leave, but I was happy to go back to Brighton.
Just my mind is like there's a million and one questions I want to ask at that point. You've been stripped of the captaincy. Your number's been changed. You're told you're no longer wanted. I know you're saying that you appreciate the honesty from the club, but you're having your Premier League dream taken away from you. That must have been a very challenging time for you, from a mental perspective. Like, I've worked so hard to get to this point, and now I'm being told that it's not going to happen. That must have been really difficult to handle.
It was difficult. It was, look, I'm not going to say it was easy. It was difficult because I'd signed from the club on -10 in League One. The dream was sold to me at the club that we were going to try and get to the Premier League. We got to the Premier League. It was a 5-year plan to get to the Premier League. We got there within 3 years. So it was a huge achievement by everyone at the football club. Was I disappointed? Yes. Did I feel as though I deserved the opportunity? Yes. But like you all know, and everyone knows, football doesn't work like that. It's a ruthless industry. It's a ruthless business. Opinions change, and football is based on opinions. So I just tried to, I didn't accept it and I wasn't happy, but I tried to think, look, this is not my career over. I can go back to a football club that's near to me, that I don't have to move my family, that I was there as a youngster. So I was excited about the opportunity going back to Brighton. But yeah, I was hugely disappointed. But it probably affects me more now that I've retired than it did at the time, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So then the move to Brighton happens on a loan. You're working under Gus Poyet. First of all, before we even begin to talk about the season, what's it like working under him?
Brilliant. I love Gus. Brilliant. Great manager. Passionate, temperamental.
Everything you see on TV.
Yeah, but amazing. A brilliant manager, a great coach. Used to join in the training, was still as competitive, still as good as when he played.
Really?
But yeah, he was brilliant coach, and I love the way he made us play. We played out from the back. His coaching methods and his training methods were he taught me a lot. If I was ever going to go into coaching, I would take a lot from how he coached, if I'm honest. And he was brilliant to work under, and he just made you love football. Now, don't get me wrong, he had an emotional side to him and a temper.
Yeah.
But we done pretty well that year, so I didn't see it too often. But he was I really enjoyed working under Gus. Really did.
Yeah, the club end up getting in the playoffs in that season. So you mentioned about redeeming yourself with the fans. Do you feel like he did that?
I hope so. I mean, the first game back, I was a little bit nervous how they were going to respond to me, I must admit. But I was very grateful because they give me an opportunity. So They give me a chance to prove myself. They just didn't make a decision before I had the opportunity to prove myself, and I think I performed well that year for them. We had a good season, should have been better or could have been better. We had a brilliant team that year. We missed out on automatic promotion by 3 points maybe, and I think we drew 12, 13 games that season, so we should have gone up automatically, and we lost to Palace in the semi-final of the playoffs.
Yes.
Obviously the local derby, so
yeah, bit of rivals, that must have hurt.
yeah, that was pretty intense, I must admit. And yeah, it was but no, it was a really, really good season, and I think it was great I went back there in the end. And that's why I said things happen for a reason. Things happen in a funny way that I actually got the chance to go back to Brighton and settle that and improve that relationship I had with the fans, and maybe just put the past to bed. So I'm grateful for that.
Brilliant. And then the move to Leicester comes about. Again, at the time, were Southampton honest with you in terms of the opportunities that you were going to get with them moving forwards, or had you decided that the time was right to maybe leave them? What's happening at that point?
No, I mean they were clear. I mean I wasn't part of the plans. I mean Pochettino was in by then. He was the manager of the club. They'd survived in the Premier League. They'd spent a lot of money on bringing players in. There was probably, I think there was 5 of 6 of us, 6 players that we were told we weren't part of the plans. Not in a bad way, just told we weren't going to. So we didn't train with the first team. We trained on our own. There were 6 of us training on our own and trained with the under-23s. So that was mentally difficult. I got injured within a week of going back. I rolled my ankle, so I was out for 9 weeks. So that was difficult as well. I mean, mentally that was difficult because I wasn't wanted by the football club. And I was injured. And there was interest in me that I was going to go to Leeds United. So I was interested in that move, but that fell through because I got injured.
So a second time potentially of going to Leeds that never happened.
Yeah, it never happened. Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't meant to happen. Obviously.
Yeah.
And then it worked out brilliant for me because due to the fact of me being injured and I didn't go to them clubs, I ended up at Leicester and working under Nigel Pearson, who obviously had been at Southampton. So people at the club had spoke really highly of him. And yeah, it was difficult to get that move through actually, because for Southampton not wanting a player, they made negotiations pretty hard that time round. It was quite strange, you know. They were told me they didn't want me. I was training. There was 6 of us training on our own, but they were asking for silly money from me. And in the end, they agreed a loan deal. I refused to go on loan because I wanted a permanent deal. So I had to believe in myself and take the risk. I took a big drop in wages to go to Leicester to make it happen. So no, but it worked out in the long run, and obviously had a fantastic time at Leicester. So I'm grateful and very happy that it happened.
Yeah, you joined in the summer that Riyad Mahrez joined in, or sorry, he joined there in the January rather. But the squad that they had, even then, that it was an amazing squad, and you went up as champions, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or, in that opening season, a bit of a feel-good factor. You seem to join teams and they have a good opening season, really. Other than the Colchester one, you seem to have a bit of an effect on the team. What is it like being, again, that dressing room in that first season? You finish in top. What do you put that success down to? What is like the one thing that really kind of stood out in that opening season?
Real talent there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there was real talent there. It was, but I'd actually say when I went there was too much talent there. That was the issue at the football club. There was too much. It needed to be balanced out. And I think, Nigel Pearson is fantastic. Probably the best manager I worked under. His man management skills are great, and he knew that. There was too many good players within that group, and the squad was too big. So, and he made the decision to bring. I'm putting myself down here. Probably a little bit more disciplined, more boring players in, but experienced players that had got promotions. So he brought myself in, he brought Gary Taylor-Fletcher in, he brought Kevin Phillips in.
Yeah.
He brought, I can't remember, a Polish player, very experienced player from Poland over.
Oh, Vasilevsky or something.
Vasilevsky,
yeah.
Just to balance the squad out, and that had a huge difference. But the squad was just full of very similar to Southampton.
Still talents who he's brought in, aren't they?
Sorry?
There's still very talented players who he's bringing in to balance the squad.
Yeah, experienced players, but with it, very similar to the players of Southampton. There was good players there, good people, really good people, and the balance at Southampton and Leicester was very, very similar. There was hungry players there. There was players that wanted to get back to the top level. So there was players like Danny Drinkwater, Matty James, who had come from Man United, who wanted to get back, had not worked out at Man United, wanted to prove themselves at the top level. You had Kasper Schmeichel, Wes Morgan, Paul Conchessi with his experience. I mean, I forget players that were there. You had Anthony Knockaert, Riyad Mahrez coming, Jamie Vardy, David Nugent. I mean, the squad was full of...
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous squad. And once, a little bit like Southampton, once we got our groove, once the team was settled, we absolutely cruised the league. I think we were promoted with 8-9 games to go. And we were champions with 5 games to go. So it was a bit of a party towards the end of the season, which was good fun.
Definitely. That opening campaign in the Premier League then, finally, the Premier League season is here for you as an individual. Yeah. Do you remember that first game playing in the Premier League? Just what were your emotions like at the time?
Yeah, it was hugely proud, but disappointment to start with, because a little bit like similar being at Southampton, I was a little bit nervous whether I was going to get my opportunity. We just bought Cambiasso in, so that didn't help.
Just a little name, just a little.
Yeah, just a little name. He come into the squad. I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a challenge. But that summer, I completely changed my diet. I completely changed my training regime. I was determined, because of what happened to Southampton, that I would get my opportunity. I'd had the best pre-season I'd ever had, and I didn't start the first game. And I was really disappointed, because I thought, right, okay, I'm probably not going to get the chance again. But I was fortunate in the fact that the Friday, I think the Thursday before the first game, Matty James got injured, unfortunately for himself. You never like to see a player get injured. So I was on the bench. And then Danny Drinkwater got injured within 15 minutes of the first game against Everton. So I came on and actually made my debut, and the feeling was amazing, really, because it was all them years of hard work actually fulfilling that dream of playing against Everton in the Premier League for Leicester. And then I went on to play, I don't know, I probably played the next 8, 9, 10 games, and then I had some issues with my calf that injured, and I think I tore my calf 5 times that season. So
Jesus.
So I kept coming, because I was in the Premier League then, and because I was so eager to come back and play, I kept coming back too early. So I wasn't quite fit. I was pushing myself too much. I kept tearing the same muscle, but eventually came back and finished the last 4 or 5 games of the season in the Great Escape at Leicester. So no, brilliant season, amazing season that year.
Was the debut in the Premier League a very similar feeling to the first game you ever played, all the way back in the St Johnstone's, like the emotion of just getting onto the pitch? Was there any parallels between that, or when you're coming on as a substitute, you're focused right from the get-go? And then comes after.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, if I'm honest. It's not the same, because it is the same, but it's not. When I first made my debut for Brighton, I felt as though that was the beginning of the journey. Now, this is going to sound really weird. When I came on in the Premier League, looking back on it now I'm retired now, it was probably the beginning of the end, because I'd achieved my dream. I achieved my ultimate goal, probably believing I would never get there, but I did. Now, that didn't happen straight away. I went on to play, I don't know, 12, 15 times in the Premier League and started a lot of the next game. So it wasn't the end then, but it was probably the start, like I say, the beginning of the end, because I'd achieved my ultimate goal and I didn't set a new goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I had them injuries and my body didn't quite get back to how I was. I'd pushed myself too much.
Yeah.
So it was real delight and real satisfaction of achieving my goal, something I never actually thought potentially would happen. But then, yeah, obviously, my from that point, I mean, I was finished within the game within 18 months, I think. So it was from achieving my ultimate dream to getting to the top level. It was over pretty quickly.
Wow, that's a hell of a statement to make.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a conscious thing. It wasn't me thinking.
No, of course, no.
It's just if I look back on it now, that's kind of what happened. And it wasn't me thinking I wasn't training any less. I wasn't working any less. I was probably working harder. I was more ambitious, but I hadn't set that new level or new goal to reach, if that makes sense. So I wasn't. Yeah. I don't know what I was aiming for then. I didn't really have direction. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's
no, it does because
I understand.
I listened to I think it might have been Tyson Fury interview that he done recently where he chased that belt for so long, and then the moment he won it, then the sense of like, well, what now? I've got this emptiness inside. I've achieved everything that I've aimed for. What exactly is my purpose now?
Yeah.
He said exactly the same thing. You know, obviously yours, you know, you didn't look at it at that particular point because you're still in that first team environment. But he said something very similar in an interview that he done when he won the I don't know what it is. I'm not a boxing fan, but he won obviously the heavyweight, whatever it was. But he says something very similar. So, no, I do get exactly where you're coming from.
I've got a bit of a question off the side of that then. Obviously, at Leicester, do you think there was a feeling amongst the team that they could go on to achieve such great things, which would clearly have been a completely next-level goal in terms of a career for any player?
Good question. The ability was always there, and it was a bit like the Great Escape when we stayed up and we won. I don't know exactly. I think we won 7, 8 out of the last 9 games of the season.
Yeah,
yeah.
That just put real belief within the group. Unfortunately, I didn't play a huge part in that. I was injured. I was in the squads. I came on for a couple of appearances towards the end of the season. So I was part of that, but I didn't really feel the momentum. I didn't feel the energy of that, if that makes sense. I almost felt an outsider to it, even though I was training every day with the squad. I was in the squads. I was on the bench.
Yeah.
So I personally didn't feel it. So from my point of view, I didn't feel as though, right, the next level now is, right, can we finish in the top 10? Can we get into Europe? Can we try and win the Premier League? I can probably tell you that the players playing and the younger players in the squad did. They believed, like, they just won 7 out of the last 9 games in the Premier League. People that win the league don't necessarily do that. So,
yeah.
But the only thing I would say is what they actually achieved that next year was even more unbelievable, because at the start of the season, we didn't even have a manager. So Nigel Pearson got sacked in the summer, left the club. Craig Shakespeare was assistant manager, which he oversaw it, and he was brilliant because he was fantastic with the players. And then Claudio Ranieri came in. So at the start of the season, for us to start so well and win the games and start to build that momentum and carry on from the season before was even a bigger achievement than people probably really realise, if that makes sense.
Can I ask how difficult it is to be playing at a club that doesn't actually have any direct leadership whilst there's a transition in management?
It can be difficult, but I think that's where Craig Shakespeare was really, really good.
Right.
He took the reins, and obviously he went on to become manager a few years later.
Of course.
But he was brilliant with the players. He was obviously Nigel Pearson's number 2. He had a real close relationship with the players, which I think you can have that as an assistant manager. And he just carried that off. And I think he realised he wasn't going to get the job, but he loved the club, he loved the players, he wanted to see the players do well. We just had a real successful season the year before by staying up. So he felt as though he had a real obligation to us as players as well as to the club. So he was brilliant, and he was instrumental in winning that Premier League, as well as Nigel Pearson was, as well as Claudio Ranieri was. Because like any new manager that comes in, Claudio Ranieri wants to put his own stamp on it, wants to change things, wants to bring his own players in. And the one thing that I would say, he'd done lots of brilliant things, but I think the main thing that Claudio did was appreciate that things probably didn't need to be changed yet, because we just won 7 out of the last 9. And by him doing that and keeping the same squad, same sort of players in the team, he carried on that momentum. So full credit has to go for him for going against what he probably believed at the time and against his experience and his managerial experience to actually go, okay, I'll go with this. And that was to do with, I think, Craig Shakespeare really saying to him, look, the players understand how we need to play. This is how we've won games. Give them the chance to prove to you that we can keep winning games.
As you say, his known ethos is to keep changing.
Yes.
To keep making amendments to things.
Yeah.
You know, he very minor changes on the pitch even during games, but constant changes.
Yeah.
So it must have been very difficult for him at the time. But as you say, it paid off.
It paid off, and we were winning games. If you're winning games, you can justify decisions. And your decisions are brilliant. If you win a game, your decision is brilliant. But if you lose a game, it's like, well, why did you do that? What a silly mistake today, or silly decision. So the players just proved to him that it was the best way for them players to play. And, you know, for them to win the league was just, I mean, it would never, well, you can never say never, but will it ever happen again? I doubt it.
Yeah, highly does it. Before we go on to that particular season, just one final question on the Great Escape. I'm going to ask it because it's an opportunity that I might never get again to ask this question. But what was there one point in before that run kicked off, or one point when the run was then starting, where a conversation was had between the players, between the management, that suddenly a switch flicked and everything started to come into play? What was it that started and kick-started that particular end of the season campaign?
Great question. You're going to be disappointed, really, because you're going to think there was some major meeting or something special happened. It didn't. It was just the fact of, if you look at the results that season, we never got beat heavily. I think the most we lost by that season was by 2 goals.
Yeah.
We were always in games. We were very competitive. We'd started the season really, really well. So we'd won games. We'd proven we could win games.
Yeah.
Nigel Pearson was brilliant. He was really, really good. He's very consistent in what he does. He doesn't, if we win a game, he's not too high. If we lose a game, he's not too low. He stuck to his principles. He stuck to his values in terms of, he didn't change training. He didn't change mentality towards the players, or right, January's now, I need to go and spend 40 million to bring players in. The only thing he did, which the 2 things that probably changed it was, one, we went to 3-5-2 from 4-4-2, we went from 3-5-2. I think we were playing 4-4-1-1, so we didn't really have 2 strikers up top. We were playing with a number 10. Yeah. But going 3-5-2, we got 2 strikers up top because we knew we needed to win games. That helped us, because that was it. We needed to win. There was no like, can we pick a draw up here? Can we do this? We need to. That was one thing. Mm-hmm. And then we had a players' meeting one afternoon, which we cleared the air. We all put our opinion in, which was actually led by Esteban Cambiasso, who didn't speak brilliant English, but he led it. So them 2 things probably changed the direction of the season.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. That season then, let's talk about it from your personal perspective, because we all know what happens. Leicester go on to win the Premier League season. In itself is a massive achievement, but for you as an individual, when when Ranieri comes in, you then in October of that season are loaned out to Sheffield United. So was it something where he came in and again similar kind of conversations to what you've had previous in your career, where they've just said, look, you're not a part of my plans, or was that told prior to him coming in as well?
No, not at all. No, not at all. It was nothing. There was nothing from the club or anything from the manager or director of football or any of the coaches suggesting that I needed to leave or
right.
I wasn't part of the plans. I was on the bench for the first 2 games of the season, so I was part of the squads. But before the transfer window closed in the summer, he brought 2 midfield players in. One of them was Kante, so again, a little bit difficult, bit of competition there. And another player, Gok Ingler from Switzerland, who was a very technical player.
Yeah.
So there was them 2. There was Andy King. There was Danny Dreamwater. There was Matty James, and there was myself. So there was 6 centre midfield players for 2 positions. So I kind of just looked at it and thought, do you know what? I'm 33 now. I want to play football. I want to play games. I'm coming towards the end of my career. I don't want to be not part of the squad. I don't want to be training with the 23s, playing reserve team football when I can go out. And I got the opportunity to go to Sheffield United, working with a manager that I worked with at Southampton. So it seemed like at the time a very sensible and very good decision. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't work out like that. But I wasn't. It wasn't suggested I needed to leave Leicester. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have left. I should have given it till January. I should have believed in myself probably a little bit more. I should have backed myself to compete against them players because I'd done it for 2 years previously. Right. But again, it probably went back to what I mentioned at the start of the show when I was younger. You know, that fear of not being good enough, that worry of, I'm not going to play games. I need to improve. I need to get better. And like I just mentioned, I probably didn't have that direction. I didn't have that goal again. I didn't set a new target for myself. So, it was a difficult decision, but something like we all do at the time. You make a decision because you think it's a good decision at the time. Unfortunately, things work out in different ways, but I thought I was making a good career decision.
You only made the loan move was only until January. Is that correct? Originally?
No, it's for the full season. It was for the full season.
Okay. So at the point when Leicester are doing well, I was just going to ask: was there ever an opportunity for you to come back? Did they ever look to do that, or are you just you're there at Sheffield United and we'll deal with it when the summer comes around?
There was an opportunity to come back in terms of there was a gap in the loan, so I could have chosen to come back. There was no desire from Leicester for me to come back. So that answered his own questions to me. I didn't want to come back and not be part, because you see it through your career. You see players that are not part of the squad. You see players in the dressing room. You see players training with the reserves and the 23s and the youth team. And I always just thought, I don't want to be that player. I don't want to be somewhere where I'm not wanted or I'm not part of the plans. But the problem was I forgot where I was. I was at Leicester in the Premier League, where I'd worked my whole career to get there and I'd given up on it a little bit too easy.
I was going to say, because when the club is doing that well, is there any part of you, I know you said that you wanted to just play football, but was there any part of you that thought, even if I'm not playing, just to be in amongst that dressing room and be there, at the club at that time, was there any temptation to come back at all?
Yes and no. Yes, because I miss being at Leicester. But no, because I'd committed to Sheffield United and the season wasn't going particularly well, and I wanted to put that right. I wanted to turn things round at Sheffield United, so it didn't work out like that, but I was determined to try and make that happen. So I was committed to that decision. Once I'm a bit like that in my character's a bit like that. If I commit to something, I'll give it everything. So it wasn't from want of trying at Sheffield United. So I didn't really feel like it was an option to go back to Leicester, even though there might have been part of me thinking that I just want to go back because it would be easier. But that wasn't the right decision. I'd committed to Sheffield United and I wanted to put things right there. I wanted to perform. So that was the reasoning behind my decision.
Fair enough. End of that season then, if you know, what are you thinking at the end of that season after you had that spell at Sheffield United? Where's your head at in terms of what you're wanting to do next in your career, having gone to the highest point that you have? You've talked about the emotions of being in the game at that point. Where's your head at the end of that season?
Yeah, it was tough. You know, I must admit, it was. I was in obviously it'd been a difficult season at Sheffield United. I hadn't performed personally. We hadn't performed as a team. So I came off that. Obviously, my contract was up at Leicester. That wasn't going to be renewed. I just had my third child as well. Literally on the day before the last game of the season. So if I'm honest, I was pretty mentally drained. I'd been playing since I was 16. So, you know, it's 18 years, I think, by the time they're 17 years. So I made the decision to take a few months out of the game, to take 6 months out of the game. Completely the wrong decision. Completely in hindsight, a silly thing to do. I was advised not to do it by my agent at the time. But I did. And then it was very difficult to get the right opportunity to get back in the game. There was a few opportunities. But I don't know. The year at Sheffield United affected me. I must admit, I'd had 7 years of consistent success, from signing at Southampton to promotions to a good loan spell at Brighton to a brilliant spell at Leicester. And then the year at Sheffield United really affected me and probably affected my confidence, affected my judgment. And I wasn't thinking clearly. And I just fancied, I wanted a break from it. But in football, you get forgotten very quickly. And there's always a younger player coming through who's hungry, who's determined, who's starting his path out in his career. And I found it difficult to get back in, I must admit.
It does seem nowadays that, you know, when I was, this is going to make me sound old, but when I was growing up watching football, the experienced head signing at a certain points of the season to help get a team over the line, or just to kind of help a team at the beginning of the season, they happened very frequently. It does seem nowadays that the game has moved on ever so slightly for the experienced heads. It does, as you said, very much focus on the youth side of things. Did you find that?
Yeah, because clubs are, like we spoke at the beginning of the show, the football as an industry is a business now. So directors and owners and chairmen will look at each player as an asset. So they're not keen on signing experienced players because there's no sell-on value for them. They feel as though they're just burning money. Now, as an insider, as a coach, as a player, as a manager, you know the benefits an experienced player can have in a dressing room, on a younger player, on passing on their experience. But the person who signs the checks, the person who signs the wages, the person who signs off the transfer or the signing, they don't see it that way anymore. They see it as, I want to sign younger players because if they perform, I can sell them on. I want to make money off them. And that's why experienced players are falling out of the game, really. They're falling because there's not probably, that sounds silly, necessarily the need for them in the eyes of the owners. Now, the managers will think very differently. They want experienced players around to make younger players better, to demonstrate to a younger player how to train, how to behave, how to perform or create good habits within diets and behaviour. So I think there's always a constant battle between a manager and a chairman on who they want to sign. So it was difficult for me to get back in, and I did have a few offers, but it just didn't work out.
And then I suppose, as you said, after that period of time where the right offers are not coming in, what are you then thinking about your next career move? I know obviously you had that that spell as a loan manager at Leicester. How did that come about? Is that, are you then thinking, what are your next options after you finish playing?
If I'm honest, it probably showed what sort of mentality I was in. I wasn't really thinking. I wasn't really planning. Which is obviously not the best way to be when you've got a family to provide for. And I was very fortunate that we were still living in Leicester at the time. The 23 man. I ended up going back doing what I was trying to run away from. So, for instance, when I was saying I didn't want to stay at Leicester because I didn't want to train with the 23s, I didn't want to be around the reserves. I ended up going back to Leicester and doing that role. So within the space of 9 months. So obviously in a different space because I wasn't contracted to a football club. I was out of the game. I was trying to get back in. And the 23s manager at Leicester just rang me up and said, look, what are you doing? Would you be willing to come in and speak to some of the younger players? We're struggling in the league. I've got a lot of injuries. Would you come in and train with us? Would you come in and help out the younger players and be a bit of work as a bit of a mentoring role? And I jumped at the chance. I thought, that sounds really good to me. It got me a chance to go back to Leicester. So I was doing it obviously all for free. It was a good experience. But I ended up going back there, and you can play overage players in the 23s. So I ended up playing probably the last 10 games of the season. I got myself fit again. I felt really good. I got some offers off the back of that, and we ended up staying up actually. So I love going back for. I think I went back in the February time, I think, and stayed till the end of the season. And I love that time. I learned a lot off the coaches. I love passing on my experience to the younger players. I love the fact of I didn't have any responsibility. So I could just train, I could relax, I could play the games in the 23s. And that led to me getting a loan manager's role.
Yeah. It's a new role, the loans manager role. We've spoken, haven't we, Adam, to a lot of pros during the 90s, early 2000s, where loans were they weren't considered the right, well, depends on who you speak to, but a loan back then to a lot of people was a club rejecting you.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's seen as a vital part of a young player's development. So when the loans manager role comes up for you and Leicester talk to you about it, how excited were you to get involved with that, with the club again in that capacity? Had it been something you had even considered beforehand? Were you looking at coaching, or what are you thinking is your next move after that point?
I wasn't considering a loan manager's role. I was doing my coaching badges. So when I went back to Leicester to train with the 23s and play for them, I was doing my coaching badges at the time. Right. So I was thinking about, I should probably go into coaching. I'd always been encouraged to go into coaching. People saw me as potentially having a career in coaching. So that was the path I was going down. I was still fit and healthy, so I was still half thinking I could play. I had a few offers from football clubs to go back and play, but I didn't for whatever reason. I don't know why. I can't explain to you why I didn't go back and play again.
I was just going to ask why.
Yeah, I can't give you a reason why I didn't go back, because I probably had 5 or 6 clubs ring me and offer me opportunities to go back, and I still don't know to this day why I didn't go back and play. If I go back now, I would. But I didn't. And the loan manager's role was something that was spoke to me about by the club, that they were going to introduce the role at the football club, and was it something that I'd be interested in. They explained the role in terms of how they thought it was important for the academy, for the younger players coming through to either trying to get into the first team or just producing players that can go and have a career in the game. So it was something following on from the mentoring role, really, which I really enjoyed. And I really enjoyed the loan manager's role. It's got such good value for football clubs and such good value for youngsters, because they need support. Younger players are going into an environment of a different football club and maybe a different part of the country with different people. and they need support. They need someone to pass on experience. They need someone to try and analyse their games, to pass on some knowledge, to give them some coaching tips or pointers. So I think the role at football clubs is getting more and more popular. It would develop into a huge role at a football club, and there end up being departments at football clubs to do with it. So I loved it, and the only reason I left with it because my wife had to have a back operation, and I had to become a full-time dad for about 5 months. So that was the only reason I left. Unfortunately, otherwise I'd still be there.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, Norwich have got Adam. Have Ipswich got? I'm not saying it's in a haha. Look at Ipswich. Have Ipswich actually got the loans role? Because Norwich have. Ours is Neil Adams.
I'm not sure. I mean, Ipswich's actual staff count is actually quite small, and I'm not actually aware of them having one. And if I'm honest with you, at the level they're at now, I don't think it's even I don't even think that's a thing, because they've got their own youth managers, and I think that they would probably look after it.
Right.
The staff at League One clubs, Ipswich are known to have one of the higher budgets at that club, but at that level. But I think it's playing, not coaching staff. They must pay Lambert a fair bit of money anyway.
Well,
to have him managing at that level, he must have a reasonable amount of money. But in terms, I shouldn't imagine there's a lot of money floating around for staff roles, no matter how good they are. And I think for Ipswich, like, they do send a fair few players out on loan, and I know they work with I know from other people we've spoken to, they do work with the managers of the different youth teams. But Ipswich do have a particularly good youth setup, and I think, as you've said, like, that role in itself is invaluable to ensuring the growth of the game, the growth of the youth team, and the future of the clubs, because with fair play restrictions and everything else that's going to be brought in, like even Brexit will affect things longer term, but being able to develop youngsters and bring them through their own system, there's more and more teams that want to rely on the academies now, as opposed to smashing out £100 million in a transfer window to bring somebody in that's proven.
I mean, do you might be able to give us your thoughts on this, Dean, but do you think the current situation that's going on in the world, from a football perspective, with the loans manager, and as Adam said, people wanting to develop their own academy, do you think this will become more of a thing than what it currently is at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. It will become an important part of a football club, because I think the clubs have been doing it for a long time now, where they're spending a lot of money on academies, on facilities, on trying to produce players for football clubs. And a lot of football clubs only end up producing players for other football clubs because they don't get into their first team, so they move on. So, and it's strange to me. I don't know why you spend all this money and then not try and get them in the first team. It's an interesting topic, really. But the loan manager's role is so important, because it's not just looking after the players; it's making the decision or helping to make the decision before the player actually goes on loan. Like, personally, I would go and watch the clubs where, if there was a player that the club had identified to go on loan, I would go, and there was 4 or 5 clubs interested in that player, I would go and analyse the football clubs. I would go and see what style of play they would play in. I would go and research the manager. I would speak to any players I know that were within that dressing room. What's the manager like? What's the club like? What are the other players like? So you get a real idea of what's the best place for that player to go to. Now, you would do all that research, and I would recommend what the best club would go to, but it would still come down to finances. It would still come down to who could potentially pay the most money to cover that player's wages. So football is such a... You're talking about politics. There's a lot of politics in football, and I get that, because it's a business. But I used to, and part of a loan manager's role, I think, as well, is that mentoring role, because I used to say to players that younger, rightly or wrongly, and their agents were probably not like this, but I used to say to them, look, when you sign a contract, don't price yourself out of a loan move. You're at the beginning of your career. I'm not saying don't try and get the best money you can or the money you deserve, but don't price yourself out of it, because if you're going to go on loan from a Premier League club, realistically, you're going to go to a League 2 club or a League 1 club. Now, they're not going to be able to afford to cover your wages. So the less money you're on, or you can get an agreement within your contract to say, I'm allowed to go on loan for this amount of money for the club to cover this amount of money, will help them. So you can really help players understand the game a little bit more than they're probably getting advice from their agents. Their agents work it as a business. They're trying to get as much commission as they can.
Exactly.
So as a loan manager, any coach within the clubs, the players just need advice to be able to try and build their career. That's why at the beginning of my career, in some respects, I was quite lucky because we weren't on money. We were getting low amounts of money, and it didn't really affect any decisions you made because it didn't come into it.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff that younger players need advice on, and I think the loan manager role, and that's why I think it will turn into a department, as in there'll be players working or staff working under a loan manager. You'll have someone who does the analysis of the games for you. There'll be maybe a mentor for the players as well as a loan manager. So I think it's going to be a huge part to play in the future.
Definitely. You mentioned about the coaching badge side of it. Is that something you're still pursuing at the moment?
No, I kind of came away from that because I think as a manager, as a coach, and what I learned from it and what I've experienced within the game, you've got to really, really want to be a coach. You've got to really, really want to be a manager. You can't be half-hearted with it. It's a fully committed job, and I was pretty open with myself. I wasn't willing to be as committed to that role as I was as a player, because I've got a family, I've got 3 children, and I didn't think that would be fair on them. So even though I would probably love to be a coach or a manager, I just don't think it would work for them, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice my family life for that.
I think that's fairly. I think that's actually 100% fair enough, to be honest. One final thing I want to ask you before we go on to Twitter questions. Obviously, you've signed recently, and we talked very briefly about it at the beginning of the podcast, that you signed for Worthing in the Ishman League. Now, how did that come about? I can imagine the manager probably had some sort of part to play in bringing you to the club, I would have thought. What kind of conversations happened with there? Is it you to bring you to them?
Well, obviously I played with Adam Hinchwood at Brighton. I know Hinch very well. I think probably 2 years ago I met him and we spoke about me potentially coming in to do a coaching role.
Okay.
So we spoke about that. Never happened. I think I took the loan manager role up at Leicester instead. So that didn't happen. And then it was I actually contacted himself. It was, I think, probably maybe 4 weeks before the season finished and the coronavirus came out. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks. It was the first time since I'd finished playing, excuse me, that I got the itch. I wanted to play again. I wanted to find out whether I could still play, whether I was still fit enough, whether I could still move my feet quick enough. I don't know where that had come from, because I've always kept myself fit. I'm still fit now. I've never put any weight on. I've never had any bad injuries. I was never the quickest player, so I hadn't lost any pace. So I wanted to find out, and I just gave him a phone call. I said, "Look, Hinch, any chance me could come in? I could come in and train." I wasn't thinking of signing. I was just like, "Can I come in and kick a ball around again?" He jumped at the chance, and I was in there, I think, probably 4 or 5 weeks. And then I ended up signing. But I must admit, the first 2 training sessions, I was thinking, what am I doing here? I think I felt like I put my boots on the wrong feet, and I was like, oh, Christ, what am I doing? But it slowly, I slowly improved and slowly
came back.
Yeah, slowly came back. And I started to really enjoy it again. And that's why I'm so disappointed for Worthing. It was down to the players they got there, and the group of players they got there, and the feel at the football club they got was brilliant, and they were great with me and welcomed me in. And we'll see what happens next year. I still feel pretty good, I must admit. But I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, what have you found from non-league football? I know you've only briefly been at that particular club, but your overall experience of it and overall non-league football, what do you make of it?
Brilliant, really, really good. Went into Worthing. I can probably only really comment on Worthing because I wasn't actually any part of any games. I'd signed for the club, and then that weekend it all got cancelled. But no, the setup at Worthing is very, very professional. It was an eye opener. It was run in a really, 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 really good way, really diligent way. They train on a 4G pitch. They play on a 4G pitch, so they play a brand of football where they play out from the back, very possession based, and training was very similar to how I would train as a professional. You train on a Tuesday and Thursday night, but the actual sessions were very, very similar. So, and the standard was very, very good, I must admit. And they were younger players coming from professional clubs. But no, the feel of their really, really, it was nice. It made me feel alive again because it's full of hungry players that want to have a career in the game, and it was such a nice feeling to feel that again. So, you know, my experience in non-league football was very, very positive.
Made you, I suppose, from a very brief time, is it kind of giving you that sense of falling back in love maybe with football again?
It has, and I've not felt like that since I've probably retired, and probably the reason why I fell out of love with the game, I must admit, from a playing point of view, and that's a shame really because I'd really enjoyed my career. I'd loved every minute. I'd wanted to do it since I was as a player. So yeah, I felt that buzz again, and that's really hard to replicate when you come out of football. So feeling that buzz and being in a dressing room again and the banter and playing football again and having that focus and that serious side as well. You know, when you're really competing and training, I've missed that competitive side. So no, it's given me that feeling again.
From a mental perspective, coming out of football, we spoke to Darren Eady. His circumstances were completely different coming out of the game as to what yours were. But from a mental perspective, does it take a bit of time to adjust not being in that kind of environment? Or do you, I mean, you've kind of got a lot going on in job-wise now. Do you just thrust yourself into as many things as you can just to kind of keep your mind occupied?
Yeah, I did. And that was a mistake, a real mistake.
Really?
I didn't deal with the issue. I didn't deal with the issue of coming back. I didn't take 5 minutes to think about what I was really doing, why I was coming out of the game, what it meant by coming out of the game. So I probably suffered in a different way, and it was it's difficult to say because everyone's has their own experiences and their own personal opinion, but I find it difficult still to this day because I chose to come out of the game. It might have been easier if this sounds bad if I was forced to come out of the games, for instance, through injury or something else. But I chose to come out of the game, so that's been hard to live with, I must admit, because I'm still fit and healthy and I should still be playing, or should have still been playing. So. Yeah, it's a challenge. It's still a challenge every day because it's all I've ever known, playing football. And then you have to try something new. You have to learn something new. That's difficult as well. So it's been a challenge coming out of the game, but it's getting better. I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying spending time with the family. But I would love to get back into the game somehow, whether that's maybe some form of coaching, maybe loan manager, maybe media work, maybe something, because I love the game and I know the game, and I'd love to help the younger players. And do you know what? I'd love to help the older players coming out of the game because I think they get forgotten sometimes.
Yeah.
100%.
I think we're realising that from the discussions that we're having, that people exit the game for many different reasons, but it often goes unnoticed the impact that has on them. And from a podcasting perspective, I think it's quite nice to be able to share those stories and that experience, because it doesn't matter who listens to it at what level. You should be able to relate to those.
Yeah, on a human level, everyone can relate to that, can't they?
Correct. And it doesn't matter if you're coming out of football or you're coming out of some other job, to start realising and understanding thought processes and what goes on behind it with people. It's really important to communicate that.
It's hard. It is hard, because you're coming towards the end of a career that it's all you've ever known, and it's suddenly you can't do something that you love doing, something you can't do as well as you used to do. You have to deal with that to start with, and then you can't do it at all. That's really difficult. And then you've obviously got the other things on top of that. You've got the financial burden. You've got you lose your sort of identity. You have an identity as, oh, look, he's a footballer. Or even with your kids, my kids used to say, oh, like, my dad's a footballer. And then it's suddenly, well, what's your dad do? Oh, he's just at home with the kids at the moment. It's you kind of, I laugh about it, but you lose that purpose and that identity. And you lose that focus, and it's because what you do get in football, you get told what to do, where to be, at what time. Everything's done for you, and then suddenly you have no schedule, you have no routine. You've got to make it up for yourself, and you end up making really bad decisions because it's the first time you've had to do it, really.
I think a lot of people could actually relate to this with everything that's going on at the moment. Like everyone's routine up and down the country and all over the world is being completely taken away from you. You are having to sort of rediscover who you are, what gives you, what gives you satisfaction, what are your passions in life, and a lot of people are having to reflect on that as well. So again, I think from a personal level, everyone can relate to what you're saying, given the current circumstances as well.
And that can be a brilliant thing as well. Don't get me wrong. You get a chance to reflect on things and start to actually think about, what do I want to do with my life? What do I love? What do I miss? That can be a really positive thing. But the hardest thing is to actually realize or get your thought patterns thinking like that. That's the hard bit.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, any other things for you before we go on to questions? Because I want to get those.
No, I don't think so. I wasn't on the end there.
Yeah.
Always it's interesting as well, that obviously you come out of the game for your own choice. No, you can still play. It's always going to be hard. Because for however many years you've been conditioned that that's what happens day in, day out. It's football. Mm-hmm. So to drop that from your life is mad. But you always speak about your parents retiring and whatever, and saying you don't know what to do. It's really difficult when you think about a footballer's career. It's very short. They can't retire and do nothing.
Yeah, there's something you have to do at the end of it.
Finding a new passion, and I think that could probably be as hard as anything else, because I doubt there's much time for anything else as an elite athlete.
No, you have to really focus on your career.
And I suppose it's mentally focusing for your career, but also on performance and making sure you've still got time for your family around it, and health, and everything else has to be absolutely peak. You've not got time to just go out and find a new hobby every few weeks if you're getting a bit bored. So there's quite a lot to discover about yourself as well, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Dean, let's get into these Twitter questions and then we'll let you go, because we've been at this for nearly 3 hours. It's absolutely flown by from my perspective. It probably has for yourself as well. We've got one coming in from Josh Nuttall, who asks, honest opinion on your time at Sheffield United, the team, the manager, the fans, and himself. There have been a couple of other ones on there, but I'm not going to read those out. So your honest opinion on your time at Sheffield United, the team, manager, and the fans, and himself.
Honest opinion, I take full responsibility. I didn't perform for the football club. That wasn't through want of trying. I trained too hard, so I got to the stage in my career where I knew I wasn't performing. So my mentality was, right, if I'm not performing, I'll work even harder. So I would work too hard during the week, during training. So when it came to a game day, I was drained. I was probably tired. there was probably an expectation from the fans on myself that when I came to the football club, because I was coming from the Premier League and I'd had promotions, that I was going to be a better player than I was, or I was going to do a different player than they expected. But no, like, I take full responsibility for it. I didn't perform individually. We didn't perform brilliantly as a team. There was a lot of change going on within the club. There was a big squad at the club at the time. I remember my first training session when I was there. I think there was 40 pros at the time. I couldn't even get a peg in the dressing room. There was that many players in the dressing room.
Wow.
We were doing like 11-a-sides, pattern of play within, and there was probably 8 or 9 players just standing on the sideline because there was too many players. These are not excuses, by the way. This is just
reality.
Yeah, and there was an expectation of the football club, because it's a big football club, and it's a good football club, Sheffield United. And the fans probably didn't enjoy me playing for the club, but I enjoyed playing for the club because, you know, when we did win games and we did perform well, which was on a rare occasion, the atmosphere at the stadium was brilliant, and they backed us, and they travelled in their numbers, they sang for us, they supported for us. So, you know, I've got no complaints towards them. I understand their complaints towards me, but all I can say is it wasn't through the want of trying. I just didn't perform.
Fair enough. That's so we've got a couple of others on here. So we've got Joel Windsor, who's a regular of our channel. Cheers, Joel, for getting in with a question. He said, did you honestly believe that when you signed for Colchester, they had a chance of survival in the Championship, or was it just about for building for life in League One?
No, definitely thought we had a chance of staying up. Obviously, I knew the squad was a good squad. I knew the position we were in the league. But I'd spoke to the manager, I'd spoke to the chairman. I'd actually watched a couple of the games on DVD. So I knew that the squad was good. But we were in a difficult position. But I believe that we could stay up. Otherwise, I wouldn't have really signed, to be honest. I wanted to play Championship football. I wasn't going there to play Championship football and then get relegated. So, no, I believe we could stay up. But there was always a chance we could go down, and the next season was obviously to try and get promoted, but that didn't happen either. So, no, I was joining the club to try and stay in the Championship, because it was a club that was ambitious, with a new stadium, with a chairman who wanted to invest in the club. So it was always with the aim to stay in the Championship.
Brilliant. So we've got Jimmy Langton, who says, who's the best manager that you played for and why?
Oh, wow. First of all, I played for some brilliant managers. You know, Gus Poyet was great. Nigel Adkins was great. Dean Wilkins, Mickey Adams, Alan Pardew. I'm probably forgetting a few here, but I'd have to say the best manager I played for and under, for many different reasons, was Nigel Pearson. Just because he was the best manager. His man management skills, his understanding of players, his decision making, his recruiting. He made the best decision as a manager. I'm not saying he was the best coach, but he was the best manager.
Brilliant stuff. And the final question we've got from Paul Moore, who says, what was the single happiest moment on the football pitch for you?
Oh, wow.
That's a hell of a question to finish the podcast off.
Hell of a question. I'm going to have to say, I mean, I was very lucky as a player. I had a brilliant career. I played with some amazing players. Obviously had promotions and relegations and played a lot of games. So I was very fortunate and very grateful for that. But I'd have to say, finally achieving playing in the Premier League, because it was just my ultimate dream. My ultimate dream to not only be a professional footballer, but to get to the Premier League. From a young lad who's from Hastings, who started in League Two at Brighton, to get to the Premier League seemed a million miles off. So actually making that debut and playing in the Premier League, I would say, was the best moment in my career.
Good.
Fantastic. That is a hell of a way to finish off this podcast. Dean, I really appreciate your time. It's been amazing to listen to your journey throughout the game. and just to hear your story, it's been incredible. I think Adam will echo that. It's been amazing. Listen, really has.
My pleasure. Anything I can do to help, no problem.
Brilliant. So if you guys have enjoyed this podcast, if you're watching from a YouTube perspective, make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening from a podcast perspective, make sure you leave us a 5-star review and also subscribe on the various podcasting platforms as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Until next time, adios.